Story 1. Stepmom lied that I had stolen the car behind her back, and so Dad kicked me out while I was bedridden after an accident. 2 years later, they wanted me at their vow renewal. So, 2 years ago, I got into this terrible car accident. I was rear-ended by a truck whose driver was drunk. It was pretty bad for me because I was left completely bedridden for 3 months after that accident. I seriously couldn't move a muscle even if I tried because everything hurt so bad. I was pretty busted up, but that didn't even seem to matter because my dad kicked me out of the house anyway. I was 18 years old back then and had taken the car out to practice driving for my driver's license test, which was a few days away when I got into that accident. I hadn't even taken the car very far. I was in the neighborhood when it happened. I had explicitly asked for permission from my stepmom since my father had made it very clear that I needed to ask at least one parent before I took the car out in any situation. So I asked her since my dad was at work, and she had told me that I could take the car. But later on, she flipped the story around to make it seem like I was going out to visit my friends and just to look cool. I had taken the car and snuck out without asking her. My dad chose to believe her without even hearing my side of the story and kicked me out. My stepmom had always been weird around me, but I had never expected her to lie to my dad about something like this and get me kicked out of the house, because that was just extreme. She had been a part of my life ever since I was 4 years old. My biological mother had never been in the picture after giving birth to me. She just randomly decided that she did not want to be a mother anymore and signed away her parental rights. She and my dad were never married, so it was easier for her to leave, and my father was ready to accept the responsibility and raise me all on his own, so he never questioned her. She had never tried to be a part of my life, and so I was happy. Even my father started dating my stepmom when I was 4 years old, and after 3 years of dating, they got married. But by then, I had realized that my stepmother had no interest in being a mother to me. She was just my father's wife, nothing else. When I was a child, we did not get along particularly well, and she usually just avoided me, but as I grew older, we started getting along even less and would argue frequently. Even when the arguments were about petty things, she would take it to extreme levels and then complain to my father about my terrible behavior, and he would always side with her, which was pretty frustrating because she was the one who picked fights with me unnecessarily. We were already not on good terms, and I was just happy that I was going to be going away to college in just a few months, but that never happened, and I ended up having to move in with my grandparents because my father did not want me anymore. It had nothing to do with money since my dad's pretty rich. He has a paper company of his own, and even apart from that, he had medical insurance for the entire family, and the car was also insured, so I know for a fact that it was not about money. The one thing that made him kick me out of the house was whatever my stepmom had told him with regard to how the accident had taken place. She had cooked up and fed him some nonsensical story about how I had been planning on going out with my friends and I wanted to look cool, which is why I had taken the car out without her permission. Apparently, she told him that she had gotten to know about it by eavesdropping on me, and she said that she had even told me not to do such things after hearing that conversation, but I had just ignored her and gone out of my way to do exactly that. This happened after the accident, and the doctors had said that I was going to be bedridden for the next couple of months until I healed enough to resume normal movement. So I was already suffering enough because of that and the pain of the accident. Then, to top it off, my stepmom had started making up stories about me to lie to my dad. For 1 week, we kept arguing back and forth about what the truth was, and eventually, I lost my cool, and I started screaming at her and called her a lot of names. I accused her of being a liar and said that she was just jealous that she could not have my father all to herself, and I said that she was sick in the head for trying to accuse me of doing something that I hadn't even done, especially given my condition. I think it was pretty much the last straw for my father, and he decided to shift me to my grandparents' house, who were kind enough to take me in. I felt very upset that my father was kicking me out of the house when I was in such terrible shape, and I even told him that the fact that he was choosing my stepmom over me meant that I was never going to see him the same way again. And he said that I apparently needed to be disciplined, and he couldn't keep hurting his wife just because I did not know how to behave myself and wanted to be a brat. So it was very obvious to me that he had chosen his side, and he had decided to believe my stepmom's version of what had happened because he did not trust me. It was really heartbreaking for me, and after that, I made up my mind that I was never going to speak to him again. It was a very hard decision for me to make because right from my childhood, it had just been me and him. My stepmom had never really been part of my family in my head. She had been there all along, but I never considered her a part of the family because I'm pretty sure that in her head, she did not consider me family either. However, after that decision that my father had made, I decided that neither of them was worthy enough of being called family since that was a big word that came with a lot of responsibilities. My father had tried to be there for me initially, and I respected that, but in the end, he valued my stepmother a lot more than me. After I moved in with my grandparents, they were the ones who took care of me and even hired a full-time nurse to help me out. They were nice people and I had always had a good relationship with them. The only reason I had not moved in with them earlier was just because I was still holding out hope that maybe my father would change eventually, but he did not. Tough luck for me. Anyway, they are good people who took care of me and made me feel really loved since they could understand that I was going through a very bad phase of my life. They tried to get my father to visit me, but he kept coming up with excuses. Sometimes he was too busy, and at other times he was too tired from work. So for almost 2 months, he did not visit me even once after the accident and after he had kicked me out and moved me to my grandparents' house. Eventually, even my grandparents got into a fight with him because of how he was behaving and said that it was not fair to me. So my father decided to tell them that he had no intention of getting back on good terms with me anytime soon because apparently, my stepmom did not approve of me anymore and had given him an ultimatum to choose between her or me, and he had chosen her. He believed that I needed to learn to be a better person and get along with people, and until that happened, he could not see us having a relationship because he thought that I had been a very difficult child to deal with in recent times and he could not put up with that kind of behavior anymore for his own sake and his wife's. So that was that, and after that we have not spoken. My grandparents were the ones who sent me to college after I had recovered, and they have been there for me all along. 2 years have passed since then, and I'm going to graduate in 1 year now. So, I've been trying to move on with my life, and it has been difficult, but I have good friends and grandparents to be there for me, so it's relatively easier for me, I guess. Anyway, I hadn't heard anything from or about my parents in the past few years, and until recently, I had no intention of ever getting back at them or doing anything to disrupt their lives. I was living and doing just fine without them, but I guess my stepmom has serious mental problems because she reached out to me last week to tell me that she and my father were renewing their wedding vows in a couple of weeks, and she wanted me to attend that event. I was very confused as to why she wanted me there, and I wrote back to her instantly telling her that I was not going to be coming. But she told me that I absolutely had to be there because my father was going to reach out to me in a couple of days to ask me about it formally. And one of the major reasons that he wanted me to be there was because some of his business associates were going to be there as well, and they knew that he had a daughter since they had seen some family photos of his desk. It would be very weird to explain to them why I was absent from such an event, and my father had been planning on reaching out to me to make amends for a while anyway. She wanted me to just accept the invitation and put everything in the past. However, I was not ready to put anything behind me because it had just been 2 years, and I was never going to be able to forget the way that my dad had made me feel. So I ignored that message and tried to get on with my day. But then, a couple of hours after not getting a response from me, she decided to message me again. And this time she said that she had always known that I was an ungrateful brat who did not know how to behave myself. And this time around, I was still trying to show how low I could go, especially when my dad was trying to make things right with me, even when I did not deserve it. She then threatened me and said that I could either be there or I could give up any hopes of inheriting my father's business or money in the long run, and she said that she would make sure of it, which is what really pissed me off because she really thought that she could scare me with those cringe threats. That's when I finally blocked her because she got on my last nerve. Before this, I had just blocked them on social media, but I had not blocked their phone numbers because it just seemed unnecessary. However, after that message, I blocked both their phone numbers as well, and I thought that this was going to be the end of it, but even that was not enough. I guess she reached out to me by writing an email to me and said that I absolutely had to accept the invitation because the renewal of the wedding vows was not just going to be an event for them. It was related to my father's work as well, and he desperately wanted me to be there. Even then, she could not have taken a nicer tone with me, especially when it was they who needed me. She still tried to threaten me into getting her way, and I decided that I had had enough. There was no need for me to run away from these things, and I finally decided to confront the situation by writing a post and attaching all the proof of the conversations that we had had so far. I also wrote about everything that had happened in the past and decided to call her and my father out on social media. I made it a public post and even tagged my dad and my stepmom in the post along with a couple of his friends from work whose names and social media profiles I could recognize. That was a deliberate move because I wanted his work friends and business associates to get to know what he had done to me in the past, since my stepmom had made it very obvious to me that the renewal of their wedding vows was going to be a business event for them as well. After the post, I did not expect anything to happen. But then a day later, I received news from my grandparents that my father was devastated because apparently what I had done had led to a huge loss for them. They were going to have a merger with an office supplies company in a few months. It was just in the initial stages, but now it was probably getting called off because of my post. It was going to be a big deal for his company, but since I had tagged certain people in my post, word got around about what had happened to me, and my father's reputation obviously took a hit because he did not come off looking too good in that post. So now the merger is in question because my father has been unable to get a response from anybody who was working with him so far, and he believes that it was because of the post that I had made. My grandparents think that what I did was probably not that good, and there was no reason for me to involve my father in all of this since it was my stepmother who was going out of her way to be mean to me. And now I feel kind of guilty as well, so I'm an a-hole for making a post to call out my father and my stepmom publicly. Update 1. Hi, so it's been a couple of days since my original post, and I decided to take my post attacking my parents down. Also, some of you have been asking me why I was referring to my dad and my stepmom as my parents, since it's very obvious that I don't get along well with either of them. Well, my dad is obviously an actual biological parent to me, and even though I don't really like my stepmother, I've known her since I was a child, and so I've gotten used to calling them my parents. I don't know how to put it any other way either. It's nothing that deep, so it's not a big deal. Anyway, coming back to what I did, I took that post down and I unblocked my father so I could reach out to him. Most people in the comments section believe that I did not owe anybody any apology, but I felt like I could at least just say that I did not mean for something so bad to happen since I had had absolutely no idea about the merger and how big it could have proven to be for his business. I did not exactly apologize. I just kind of justified myself and told him that everything that had happened 2 years back was something that still stayed with me, and I haven't been able to completely move on from that. So getting to know that he was going to invite me to an event and try to make amends with me, but even that was just because he wanted to pretend everything with his family was normal in front of his business associates. That was just hurtful. And the way that my stepmom had been behaving with me had been very insulting, which is what pissed me off, and that's why I made that post. So I put it all in one text and I sent that to him. I didn't really expect him to reply to that because I knew that he was going to be very pissed off with whatever had happened. But then he did reply to me and he just told me that it was fine, he deserved this after everything that he had done, and he did not blame me for the way that I had reacted. That was a pretty weird reaction, and so I decided to speak to my grandparents about it because I thought that maybe they would know why he seemed to be acting so strange, because I definitely expected him to at least be pissed off and berate me for what I had done. But nothing of the sort had happened. So when I asked my grandparents about this, they told me that apparently he had been regretting his actions for a really long time now, and it just all came to a head when I put up that post. They said that they had already discussed these things with my father recently before I had sent that text to him, and he had expressed how much he regretted kicking me out back then. It had been his own personal choice to do that, but he claimed that he had just been confused about what to do. My stepmother always made it sound very convincing whenever she told him about how bratty and awful my behavior was, and he had bought it. But then he had started doubting himself and whatever my stepmom would tell him a couple of weeks after he had kicked me out. He had just never been able to gather the courage to set things right with me, and he knew that he deserved this, which is why he did not try to retaliate or even argue with me when I sent him that text. They also explained to me that he had genuinely wanted to invite me to the renewal of their wedding vows. And it was not just meant to impress his business associates, as my stepmother had told me. In fact, his business associates were not even invited to the event. It was a very close and intimate thing, so he did not know why she would say such a thing, probably just to create a rift between my dad and me. I never really understood her reasons, but anyway, he had seen the screenshots that I had posted and had realized that my stepmother had a problem with lies, and they had hit a rough patch as well. He hadn't heard back from the guys whom he was supposed to have the merger with yet. So he's assuming that it's been called off, and he's going to receive a formal email or something about it later on. But for now, his personal life is in shambles, and that's what he's trying to deal with. Now, after having that discussion with my grandparents, I really don't know how to feel. They told me that they were proud of me for doing the right thing and reaching out to him even if it was not to apologize, because even my grandparents don't think that an apology is necessary in this scenario, since there was some misunderstanding that had been created because of my stepmother, and I had just reacted any other person in my place would. But at least I had the courtesy to reach out to him and try to make things right with him, so they appreciate that. However, I just don't know how to feel about this situation with my dad and me anymore. Things have been really bad for the past 2 years between us, and before, when I did not have any contact with him, I honestly found it easier to deal with my emotions. But now I just don't know how to feel about any of this. Update 2. Hey, so a lot of the comments on my previous update told me that I should not reach out to my father again and I should stay no contact with him. I don't know about you guys, but I truly don't think that that's the right way to go. Anyway, I've already broken the no contact thing by reaching out to him after that post, so I don't think I can exactly go back all of a sudden. There are so many unresolved issues and unanswered questions that I still have. I don't think I can go back to having no contact with him so soon, maybe after having at least just one discussion with him to get the closure that I need or whatever. Maybe after that, but until that happens, I really don't think that what you guys are suggesting is even feasible for me. I don't care if you people call me weak or stupid. I know what my heart wants and I know what's good for me. So trust me, I got this. Anyway, I spoke to my grandparents about the way that I was feeling, and I told them that I thought that it would be good for us to sit down and have a conversation with each other. And they said that they thought that it would be a good idea as well, and are in the process of talking to my father and arranging for us to meet. From what I know, things are not going too well between him and my stepmom so far, and they might be headed for a divorce. I'm not sure about that yet, but it'll be pretty funny if that happens, because they were just about to renew their vows, and now that's not going to happen, and instead, they might end up separating. Talk about irony. But coming back to what my grandparents told me, they have been in touch with my father, and they are also trying to rebuild their relationship with their son, because my grandparents don't have their entire life ahead of them as I do. They have limited time and they have to make the most of it, so I can understand why they want to make things right with him. Besides, it seems to me that my dad is genuinely apologetic for everything that has happened in the past, because my grandparents told me that he has been pretty devastated and doesn't even seem to care about the merger falling through. All he talks about is how he screwed up as a father and that he failed me, and I guess I can see where he's coming from. I don't think I've ever tried to think about things from his point of view. My grandparents have told me that they are going to speak to him and let me know when we can meet, and I just hope that it goes well. Update 3. Hello, so 2 days ago I finally met my father after 2 years of having no contact with him. We met at my grandparents' house and it was really emotional. I still can't believe that I finally got to sit down and talk to him about everything that had been bothering me and got the answers to the questions that I had been thinking about for so long. He started off by apologizing to me for what he had put me through and said that he knew that he had failed as a father and did not even deserve to be sitting in the same room as me, since I had turned out to be a better person than he had ever imagined and he had no role to play in any of it, which I don't think it's true, to be honest. He was the one who had raised me pretty much single-handedly, because when I was younger, my stepmother just kept avoiding me. Our relationship only went sour as I grew older and things went down with my stepmom. But before that, he had always been a great father to me. But anyway, he acknowledged that he had made a lot of mistakes, and the worst of them was trusting my stepmother over me. He explained that he had just assumed that she was telling the truth because she was older, and he never thought that she would lie to him, because when it was just the two of them, she was very clever at manipulating him, and I'll have to admit, she was definitely a smooth talker. He told me that he had been manipulated, and he was honestly so confused about who was telling the truth and whom to trust that he ended up making the wrong call. And even after he had started doubting himself, he did not have the courage to face his mistakes and talk to me, and that's why he had not reached out to me after he kicked me out of the house. He said that he was truly apologetic for all of it from the bottom of his heart, and now it was up to me whether I wanted to accept that apology and work on our relationship or not. He told me that even if I decided not to forgive him and go back to having no contact, he would be fine with it, because he knew that he had screwed up in a colossal way, and he had to be fine with whatever decision I made. I also learned from him that he and my stepmom were headed for a divorce and she had moved out of the house already. After seeing those screenshots that she had lied to me about why he wanted to invite me to the vow renewal, he confronted her about what she had told me, and they ended up in a big fight. She admitted to everything, even lying 2 years ago about what had happened with the car and why I had that accident. After that, there was obviously no way that he could be with her anymore, so he asked her to leave and filed for a divorce. It was very difficult for me to come to a decision right then and there, so I told him that I would need some time to think about things, and right now that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to ascertain whether I should give him a second chance or not. I know most people would say that I shouldn't, but ultimately, he's my father and only I can make the right decision. Besides, I am an adult now and I don't really need to depend on him for anything, and he doesn't need to rely on me either. After I graduate from college, I'm going to get my own job and be financially independent, so that part is completely out of the equation here, just in case anybody wanted to accuse him of trying to make things right with me just because he wanted to be able to depend on me after he retired, since that seems to be a common argument here. I don't think that's going to be the case because his business is doing pretty well with or without the merger. Even after his reputation took a hit, his numbers and sales did not, so I think that speaks for itself. It's a purely emotional relationship between a father and a daughter, and now I have to decide whether I want to work on that relationship or not. I'm leaning towards yes because he is the only parent I have ever had, and even though the past few years have been bad, I can't let that get in the way of everything that he has done right. But I'm still not sure yet, which is why I'm posting it here to see what people think. I genuinely want to make things right and have a real shot at having a normal family, and this is my only chance, so please keep that in mind before making any comments that I really want things to work out. Update 4. So I decided that I'm going to try and work on my relationship with my father. We are starting therapy together next week, and I hope that it works out for us. We are also going to try and rebuild our relationship by trying to actually talk to each other and communicate often. My grandparents are really happy about it, and I feel hopeful for the future. Honestly, I'm genuinely ready to put everything in the past and move on. Now on to the next story. Story 2. For 3 long years, I wanted revenge because my wife had betrayed me by being unfaithful. My revenge began with discovering my wife's infidelity. Let's call her Carrie. After 14 years of marriage and 3 kids, I saw a text appear on her work phone for just a few seconds that would forever change my life. It was a message that was sexual, graphic, and had no business being on anyone's work phone. It was on the lock screen and the sender name was visible. Let's call him Perry. Background. I married Carrie when I was 25 and she was 22. I was teaching high school at the time and she was an RN. After having our first child, Carrie became a stay-at-home mom. Money was tight, so I took on an admin role in my department and coached 2 sports for the stipend. We made it, and after a few annual pay raises, I stopped coaching and took advantage of a program to earn an administrative credential. Once I made the jump to administration, our last child was ready for preschool, and Carrie decided she wanted to go back to work. Nursing jobs are always available, but they're not always the best positions. Carrie pretty much had to start back at the bottom, working alongside nurses that were a lot younger than she was and could work back-to-back double shifts. That took a toll on Carrie. When she asked her supervisor about other positions, she was told that without a BSN she wasn't going to move up. At the time, Carrie had only the 2-year ADN. I told her that between preschool, after-school rec, and my retired mother who was always willing to pick up the kids from school and watch them, I'd support her getting it. It took her 3 years, but eventually she had her BSN and was promoted to a better position at the hospital. Things were good for a while. We had plenty of money, so we finally moved into our own McMansion, bought new cars, etc. I'd moved from school admin to the district admin, so I had more time to spend with Carrie and the kids. She was working a more predictable schedule, and even with my off-and-on long hours at work, this change allowed us to finally take vacations to all the places we'd put on a list during our honeymoon. At some point, years later, I noticed she was carrying 2 phones with her. When I asked her about it, she said that it was a phone provided by the hospital. I didn't question her explanation because my district had also given me the option of a phone or a phone stipend, which I took instead. Again, months went by, and I thought we were a happy, perfect family. I charged my phone in our den while she charged her phones in our guest bedroom that doubled as a computer room so we could keep tabs on the kids while they surfed the web. I was updating software on the computer when I saw a light around her work phone. She had a habit of always turning her phones face down when charging them. Out of curiosity, I reached over to the phone and flipped it over. A message had popped up on the lock screen, asking her when she'd like to be orally pleased again, but in much more graphic language. I also saw that Perry sent it. The world stopped around me. I just froze. My first thoughts were, what the hell was that about? It's her work phone. That kind of message gets people fired. Then it hit me, was Carrie having an affair? It's amazing how the brain works. I suddenly started remembering a lot of things Carrie had done that seemed odd, but I'd either dismissed them myself or immediately accepted her explanation. She was always walking out of the room to answer a call or return a text and claimed that it would violate HIPAA if I overheard her talking about a patient. I accepted this because education has similar privacy laws regarding students. She would sometimes come home with a faint smell of cologne on her clothes and claimed it was from helping to move male patients. Again, I accepted this at face value, but it always struck me as odd how it seemed to be the same scent of cologne. Once the proverbial barn door was open, I started seeing a lot of things that I'd missed before. Our love life in the bedroom had cooled off considerably, which wasn't helped by her having to leave the house at odd hours to fill in for other nurses that called in sick. I also recalled where I'd seen the name Perry before, and a call to the hospital confirmed he was a doctor there. For the next week or so, I was walking around in a daze trying to put all of the pieces together. One of our kids had left a book in Carrie's car, so it was an excuse to visit the hospital. Carrie had told me personal visits were frowned upon. My kid went up to get Carrie's car key. I'd forgotten my key to her car at home. I talked to a nurse in the lobby and joked about how work phones seem like a blessing, but all they do is put you on call 24 hours a day. This led to her eventually telling me that the hospital was too cheap to give cell phones to nurses, so only high-level executives got them, which didn't include Carrie. With pretty much everything confirmed, I took some personal time off the next day to talk to a divorce lawyer. The news she gave me was horrible. We lived in a community property state with no-fault divorce. I made more money than Carrie. She'd been the primary caretaker of the kids, and we'd been married for more than 10 years. Basically, if I filed for divorce, I'd be screwed. Lose the house, pay alimony, she'd get a huge chunk of my retirement, and I'd pay child support for the next decade unless I was lucky enough to be awarded joint custody. The worst thing she told me was that it didn't matter that she cheated. It didn't matter. I was crushed. There was only one person I could trust with this kind of information. She was a fellow teacher that had also made the jump to administration but was stuck at a school site. Let's call her Anne. And had been married at 19, but her marriage was annulled when he got some other woman pregnant. Since then, she'd focused on her career, and we'd found we were kindred spirits in a lot of ways regarding K-12 education. I talked to Anne. She said something to me that changed my whole mindset. If you don't like the hand you're dealt, change the deck. I realized I had two problems. I made more money than Carrie, and she had more time than me to be the primary caretaker of the kids. The second issue was actually kind of easy. At every district office there are jobs that are fast tracks to higher positions, and there are jobs that administrators suffer through like mess or KP duty in the military. One of these dead-end regulatory positions was open. Again, ambitious administrators leave after a couple of years when a better position opens up. I sat down with our district superintendent and asked about being transferred to that position. At first, he was shocked, but I told him that it was my time to take one for the team and it would fill a hole in my admin experience. He agreed. It was really just crunching numbers with no personnel or student interaction, so I could set my schedule, even take a laptop home and work there. With my new free time, I began taking the kids to school, picking them up from school, not leaving them in after-school rec or having my mother watch them, and taking them home. I'd help them with their homework, make dinner, etc. While the end goal was to become their primary caretaker, I can't explain how much I really enjoyed taking a more active role in their day-to-day lives. My salary hadn't been reduced, so I needed to find a way for Carrie to make a lot more money than she was in her current nursing position. I remembered Carrie being mad after she'd earned her BSN and a supervisor told her, "In the future, bachelor degrees will be worthless and everyone will need at least a master's degree." Carrie had worked hard to get her BSN, and that supervisor's comment pissed all over her hard work. I talked her into starting an MSN program. I told her that since I had a much more flexible work schedule, I would keep taking care of the kids. She was reluctant at first. Then I said, "You could have every evening free to study or go to class. Whatever you want to do." I saw her eyes immediately light up, probably thinking that she could spend more time with Perry. To make sure she was actually completing her MSN courses, I paid her tuition and fees directly to her university. It was going to take her between 2 and 3 years to finish. Those years were rough at times. I could tell every time she was rushing off or coming back from seeing Perry. There was an excitement or sense of satisfaction in her eyes that just wasn't there when she was doing her coursework. I had to either smile or pretend I didn't notice. My temper got short at times, and I found myself in arguments over petty nonsense. A couple of times, I almost blew the whole charade, having to bite my tongue and apologize rather than scream insults at her that she deserved, and remained my confidant through all of this. I'd recommended her for my previous fast-track position, and she joined me at the district office, and was qualified, hardworking, ambitious, and only needed her foot in the door to impress the higher-ups. I even got a few pats on the back for recommending her after she impressed everyone. And I started our own affair. It wasn't some hot-blooded, passionate romance, but two friends giving each other what they needed. Without, and I wouldn't have been able to maintain the charade of being the oblivious cuckold. But when Carrie would come home smiling after spending time with Perry, I was able to bear it, smiling back because I had my own lover. After 3.5 years, Carrie completed her MSN and was promoted at her hospital. Her salary went up substantially and was now higher than mine. When the kids and I made her a congratulations dinner, I made a joke about her being the breadwinner for the family, and she laughed, joking back, "I should be a stay-at-home dad now." A month later, I went back to the lawyer who didn't remember me at first and told her the financial situation had drastically changed. With these new facts, she drafted the petition and filed it. When the kids were with my mother, I had Carrie served. The deputy knocked on our front door, and I let him in, pointing at my wife. He asked her name and then handed her a copy of the divorce petition. With the deputy standing there, I told Carrie I knew all about her affair with Perry, but I didn't tell her how long I'd known. I told her to go be happy with her doctor lover. She screamed at me, tried to lie, and then made the mistake of rushing toward me. The deputy stopped her and warned her that women go to jail for domestic violence, too. He suggested she pack a bag to stay somewhere else. Carrie left after a promise not to tell the kids about her affair. I didn't tell the kids, but I told my mother, who told my sister, who told her kids, who told their cousins, my kids. Took a few days, but eventually the kids knew that Dad was divorcing Mom because she had a boyfriend. In the end, the court granted the divorce, giving me primary custody of our kids because I was already their primary caretaker. I kept the house with the promised refinance to buy out Carrie's half. She was ordered to pay child support, and I used that fact to negotiate with her to give up any rights to my retirement if I bought her out. I was able to refinance my home. It was the era when banks threw money at everyone to buy or refinance a mortgage. With a little money borrowed from my parents, I bought our Carrie's community property interest in the home and in my retirement. The day she signed all the paperwork with my lawyer, finally ending any possible financial obligations to her, was the happiest I'd been. I felt like I could finally breathe. I celebrated with and who'd been my rock through all of it. I'm not ashamed to say that through the years I'd cried many times in her arms. And I would eventually marry. She got promoted to a higher position, and I was convinced to take back my previous position at the district. When my Carrie and I got along well after the divorce, we took the kids to family therapy and worked out this co-parenting thing. For the few months, she took a beating from the kids about why she needed a boyfriend when Daddy was there all along. Between the kids and the therapist raking her over the coals, I didn't have to say anything at all. Carrie missed a lot of time with the kids because of her now legitimately busy work schedule, and I actually felt bad that my kids were missing time with her mother, so I encouraged them to talk to her on the phone instead. When Carrie found out that I'd proposed to and she congratulated me, I told her it's okay for her to marry Perry, too. She got sad. She told me that Perry had started seeing another woman, a younger nurse at the hospital, because with her new position she didn't have time for him, and when they did get together, she wasn't fun anymore. My ex-wife, the woman who cheated on me and destroyed our marriage, was looking to me for sympathy. I had none to give. What I had was years of anger and frustration, years of knowing some other man was sleeping with my wife. I'd lost weight from not being able to eat. I'd suffered hypertension and had to confide in my doctor why it wasn't the stress of my job. I had to listen to my dentist complain about how I was grinding and listening to him tell me I'd need dental implants if it kept up. There were times when I had to be intimate with Carrie to keep up the charade, fortunately infrequently, only to lie that I wanted to use condoms to remind us how we used to have sex when we were dating or because I might have a bladder infection. Then I'd go take an STD test anyway and wait for the results before seeing her again. But in the end, it was all worth it. Sure, Carrie got a big payout when I bought her out of the house in my retirement, which she was trickling back to me through child support. But she lost everything else. Her kids only saw her every other weekend and spent a couple of holidays with her. Perry dumped her, and he was no great catch anyway since he was twice divorced with 5 kids and paying alimony and child support through the nose. I kept my kids, my house, my income, my retirement. I got and I am genuinely happy. If that's not pro-revenge, then I don't know what is. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I kicked out my stepdaughter after she publicly assaulted me at my own baby shower. But now everyone's saying I'm the evil stepmom who broke up a happy family. Hi, so before I begin, let me tell you guys something about us. I'm a 30-year-old dental hygienist. I have been married to my husband for 2 years, and we have been together for 6 years. My husband is slightly older than me. He is 39. He has been married before and even has a daughter from his previous relationship. He and his ex-wife got together in college and got married because she was pregnant, but that marriage didn't last long, and they got divorced when their daughter was 2. They have partial custody of her and have been co-parenting her for 14 years. She has him for half the month, and he has her for the other half. My stepdaughter, let's call her Abby, 16F, has always been a nightmare to deal with. When I first started going out with my husband, she was indifferent to me. Even though I tried to be friends with her, she rebuffed me, and I figured that it would take me some time to win her over. But it's been 6 years now, and she still hates me. So I don't think that was ever in the cards for us. She only started getting worse with time, and she went from indifference to being horrible to me. She would throw tantrums when I would come over and be very nasty to me. Even though her father would try his best to make her behave herself, she would be openly rude, make awful remarks about my appearance and stuff, and even call me a gold digger on more than one occasion. I almost broke up with my husband after dating for 2 years because she was getting on my nerves, and I had been finding it really difficult to make my peace with her being around. I didn't want to make him choose between Abby and me because I didn't want to be one of those women who broke up a family, but that ended up happening anyway. After we had been together for 2 years, I told my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, that I couldn't deal with this anymore, and if Abby didn't start behaving with me, then I couldn't make this relationship work anymore because I'd had enough. He had been trying to talk some sense into her, but she would always just ignore it and treat me badly. She accused my husband of preferring me over her whenever he tried to talk to her about the way she had been behaving. It had been difficult for me, and even after 2 years, there was no sign of improvement, so I was seriously considering breaking up just for the sake of my own peace of mind. By then, I was spending practically all my time at his place in the days that he didn't have Abby. I was just fine, but as soon as she entered the house, I would start feeling extreme levels of anxiety, and it couldn't be normal. So, before he officially asked me to move in with him, I decided to talk to him about Abby. He told me that he was trying, but his ex-wife was the one making matters worse by putting it into her head that if he got remarried, then it would be a threat to Abby and her place in the family. Abby still believed that she could get her parents to reunite because that's what her mother taught her. It wasn't because he was telling him love with my husband, but mostly because she hated him and didn't want him to be happy. She hadn't been able to get alimony from the divorce and still held that against my husband because she felt that he owed it to her. Even though they had equal income and split all the work equally, she felt entitled to it for no real reason and had been bitter in the aftermath of the divorce. My husband not caring in the least about her bitterness made her even more, and she started using Abby to harass any woman who was a part of his life. But I really loved him, and Abby wasn't going to drive me away. So, he did the only thing that he could do and decided to threaten Abby by telling her that if she misbehaved with me again, then he would permanently cut her off and make her live with her mother forever. Now, Abby hated me, but she did love her father, and he had never threatened to send her away before, so that really scared her, and she started behaving herself. She wasn't nice to me, but she started to ignore me instead of being horrible to me, and that was a huge improvement. With that out of the way, he and I started living together, and even on the days that he did have Abby, it wouldn't be a problem for me because now we would just not speak to each other unless it was absolutely necessary. It felt strange in the beginning, but I got used to it, and I was much happier after that. So, when he asked me to marry him, I said yes because now everything was finally working out. On the day of our wedding, Abby looked very upset, but thankfully, she didn't do anything. Part of the reason might have been the fact that my husband had given his sister strict instructions to keep an eye on her to make sure she didn't attempt to ruin the day. It was sad that he had to take precautions against his own daughter, but at least that prevented anything bad or embarrassing from taking place. Even after we got married, nothing much changed, and Abby and I continued to be indifferent to one another. Just to be clear, I didn't have anything against her personally, and I actually even felt bad for her because it couldn't be easy having a mother who was just using you to get back at her ex-husband. If she had ever approached me to apologize, I would have gladly accepted it and tried to be a good stepmother. But I couldn't accept an apology that I never received. After the way that she had terrorized me for months when I first got together with my husband, I didn't have it in me to talk to her and try to befriend her. Things have been this way for a while and everybody has made their peace with it. Then, about 7 months ago, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant, and we were really excited, so we threw a party to announce it. Abby was there, obviously, but she was very unhappy when she found out that the reason we were throwing the party was because I was going to be a mother. She actually stormed out of the living room in tears a few minutes after I made the announcement, and my husband had to go after her to console her. He told me that she was upset because she was going to have to share her dad with another baby, but I knew that she was more upset about me becoming a permanent part of the family now. It became even more obvious when, after getting to know that I was pregnant, she started doing strange things around the house on purpose. She would leave her roller skates lying around inside the house in places they were not even supposed to be in, probably in hopes that I would trip on them and fall. More than once, she had left strong-smelling food items out, knowing that they would make me nauseated after I entered my second trimester. But these were petty things, and I didn't let them get to me or bring it up with my husband because I didn't want to seem paranoid and freak him out. The last straw was what happened at my baby shower a couple of days ago, and I don't think I'm reading too much into that. Everybody had been invited to my baby shower, and my husband had ordered a special cake for me, which was also supposed to be the gender reveal cake. We had waited because we wanted to combine both the events, and everyone was really excited about it. I cut the cake and was about to bring out a slice so we could all see the color on the inside, but before I could grab it, I felt somebody pushing my face into the cake and holding it for a few seconds until my husband grabbed my shoulders and brought me back up. I already had asthma, and I felt I was suffocating while my face was being held down inside the cake. As it turns out, Abby had been standing right beside me. She snapped and went crazy when I cut the cake and decided to shove my face inside it. She's around the same height as I am and much stronger since she's an athlete, so it was easy for her to hold me down. I heard later on that my husband had been so stunned by what had happened that it took him a few seconds to grab me and pull me back up. Then, the two of us headed to the washroom so I could get cleaned up and change into fresh clothes. While I was changing and trying to process this, my husband told me to wait inside the room while he dealt with the situation outside. I kind of broke down when I was on my own inside the room because I thought that things were finally getting better, but I knew that as long as Abby was in this house, she would never let me have a moment of peace. I was honestly scared for my baby because I didn't trust her, and I thought that she might try to hurt him after he was born. We did have the cake later and found out we were having a boy. I had made up my mind that I would have to talk to my husband and tell him that Abby needed to go, and if he didn't kick her out after this, then I would leave him. It was a tough call to make, but I couldn't endanger my baby by living in a house with someone like Abby, who was clearly unhinged. But turns out there was no need for any of it because by the time my husband came back into the room, he told me that Abby was gone and wouldn't be coming back. He'd been gone for about half an hour, and I had been sitting alone in my room waiting for him to return while all our guests waited outside. Once he returned, we went back to the guests and apologized for what had just happened, but everybody was really understanding, and they were mostly just concerned about me. After everyone had made sure that I was doing fine, we got back to the cake and had a subdued celebration when we found out that we were having a boy. After dinner was served, People cleared out pretty quickly because of how awkward and uncomfortable the vibe of the place had become after the incident with Abby. My husband and I were also really quiet because we were still in shock from what Abby had tried to do to me. Once all the guests had left, we got to talking, and he told me that while I was in the room, he had come back out and dragged Abby away forcefully. She had just been standing in the same spot, looking really pleased with herself while everyone stared at her with horrified looks on their faces. But when he started dragging her out of the house, she started protesting and making a huge racket. He didn't stop and dragged her to the car and then dropped her off at her mother's house. He didn't have enough time to talk to her mother, so he just dropped her off and told Abby to explain to his ex-wife what had happened. She kept screaming at him about the car ride, but he paid her no mind because he couldn't let this go on and put me and our baby in danger. He had given her enough chances to become a better person, but she just wasn't going to change, and he wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. He apologized to me because he felt like he had put me through a lot for the sake of his daughter, and we ended up crying and hugging. That's how relieved we were when Abby was finally gone. The next day, he dropped off all her clothes and stuff at her mother's place and told her that he wouldn't be taking her back anymore because he was done with her. He informed his ex-wife that he would be speaking to his lawyer shortly, and they were going to renegotiate the custody terms formally. But until then, she would have to look after her because he couldn't put me and our baby at risk of being harmed by Abby, and she had proven that she was fully capable of doing that. He told her that she had made her this way and had encouraged her to be a brat throughout her childhood. So now she would have to take accountability for it and raise her. Her mother didn't take it well and refused to accept the responsibility of taking care of Abby on her own. Thankfully, Abby wasn't at home. She was at school, so she wasn't there to overhear the conversation because that really would have broken her heart and probably pushed her off the edge for good. Her parents were actually fighting over who had to keep her, but while my husband had genuine, valid reasons not to want her around anymore, her mother didn't have any and only said that she didn't have the time or resources to raise Abby on her own. For the record, she was the receptionist at a really small-scale family-owned firm, so it certainly wasn't as if she was the busiest person on earth, and she was always back home by 6. As for the resources, my husband had agreed to pay her child support, but she didn't want that either, and it was pretty surprising because their fallout had been over money in the first place. Now that my husband was willingly offering her more money, way more than what she actually needed to raise Abby, she was rejecting it. It didn't add up, but even though my husband kept persuading her, she refused to take on that responsibility. Eventually, she agreed that she would look after her for a few weeks, but after that, my husband would have to arrange something for her. So, overall, that conversation didn't go as planned, but my husband is sure that when they start renegotiating the custody terms legally, he won't have much trouble getting her to take in Abby. We have no idea why she doesn't want Abby because it's very obvious that the two of them have a better relationship than she does with my husband, and yesterday we found out that even Abby doesn't want to stay with her mother full-time, which was extremely shocking since I believed that she would love the opportunity to move out of here permanently. She called her father yesterday to apologize for what happened at the party, and she was crying while she said that she didn't want him to give up her custody. She was devastated when her mother told her that my husband was about to renegotiate the custody terms, and that she might end up living with her permanently with no chance to ever visit her dad again. So now, she wanted to apologize to me because she didn't want to lose her relationship with her father, and she kept pleading with us on the phone not to do this. She addressed me directly and told me that she promised she would try to be nicer and not let her emotions get the better of her and lead her into doing insane things. She also told me that she thought the cake thing would be funny and didn't consider the consequences of it while she did it, but she wanted to apologize for it from the bottom of her heart. It was difficult for both my husband and I to hear her out because she was crying hard, but we had to tell her that we couldn't take her back in because she might just lose her temper some other day and my husband might not be at home to rescue me, and it could lead to something terrible happening. So, it was best for all of us if she stayed away for a while, at least until our kid was older. I told her that I did feel bad for whatever she was going through, but I couldn't help her because this apology was coming really late. The damage had already been done, and she couldn't take it back no matter how much she apologized. She started crying even harder when I said that and pleaded with me to reconsider. She said that she couldn't go through life without her parents, and that included her father. It was getting too much for me to handle, so I told her that I wish I could help, but it was just too dangerous, and then I disconnected the call because I was finding it very hard to stay firm while she was crying like a baby. It was just too much for me to take. I was already really emotional because of the pregnancy, and when I ended the call, my husband and I couldn't stop crying because of how difficult this had been for both of us. But we had to do this for our own safety. However, nobody else seems to care about how tough it must have been for us to make this decision, since now everyone's blaming us, or rather blaming me to be more precise, for breaking up a happy family for my own selfish reasons. I don't understand what's selfish about not wanting to get hurt, since that's pretty much what Abby has been out to do ever since we know each other. Nobody else knows much about our situation, but ever since the phone call, my husband's ex-wife, her parents, her friends, and some of his relatives have been texting him to say that he is making a huge mistake and that it's not fair for me to demand that he give up on Abby, especially now when she is going through something difficult. It's more important for us to be there for her rather than abandon her just because things are tough. The number of people who have told us that what we're doing is wrong and are blaming me for breaking up their family is so overwhelming that now I don't know if this is the right thing to do anymore. AITA for rejecting my stepdaughter's apology and not letting her move back in with us? Update 1. Hi, so first of all, thanks for all the comments and reassurance that my husband is indeed on the right track. Now, coming to a couple of things that a lot of you had said regarding why exactly it had taken my husband so long to kick Abby out, even though her behavior had been nothing short of terrible all along. Of course, as a father, he would not want to give up on his only child, and no matter what, he would want to make the best of the situation just so he could at least try and make her a better person. There was also the fact that if he let her live with her mother, she would most certainly turn out to be the worst version of herself because her mother was an enabler and encouraged bad behavior. I don't think any father would want that for his kid, so no matter what Abby did, he put up with it because he knew that he wanted to continue trying and didn't want to give up on her as a lost cause because she was still young, and he believed in her and felt that he could make her better. That's why it took us so long, because my husband believed in Abby, and I believed in him. I could have left quite easily and never would have been caught in this mess in the first place. But I really love my husband and always have. I think he is the perfect man, and I wouldn't have given up on this no matter how badly his daughter behaved with me. So everyone who was telling me that I was a fool to marry a man who already had a child from a previous marriage, maybe I was a fool, but I don't know. I feel like being with him makes it all worth it, so I hope that explains why this went on for so long. That being said, we are still sticking to our decision to make Abby live with her mother because we can't afford to have her back at the moment. It's just too risky, and neither my husband nor I want to take that risk. It was stupid of me to take whatever other people were saying seriously because most of these people don't even know the real situation here. Most of them were Abby's mother's cronies, so in all probability, they just wanted us to take her back and couldn't care less about whether she and her dad were really a happy family or not. We still haven't been able to figure out why she doesn't want Abby, but my husband is trying to get to the bottom of it. He thinks that the truth is going to come out anywhere when the legal proceedings start, so it's just a matter of time. He has already spoken to one of his cousins who works with troubled kids and has been discussing the idea of rehabilitation centers for Abby in the future, and I think it's a fantastic idea because that might help her out definitely more so than living with her mother will. For the time being, of course, she has to live with her because nobody else wants to take her in. My husband had asked his parents, but they declined because they said that they were too old, and after what they saw at the party, they didn't want to take her in and regret it. His ex-wife has been hounding him almost daily to think about what they are going to do regarding Abby, and she has really been guilt-tripping him and trying to make me the bad guy here. She believes that my husband has lost his mind because of me and is putting me and the new baby first, forgetting about Abby, which is crazy because he had tried to balance everybody for a really long time, but she didn't seem to care about that. She had made things worse for Abby herself by rewarding her bad behavior and teaching her that she needed to drive other women away from my husband, so this is really on her. But she very conveniently has been trying to make my husband feel guilty just for looking out for his family. It's alright though, because the custody terms are going to be renegotiated in a couple of days, and then we will all know why exactly she's so opposed to the idea of taking her own daughter in. Update 2. Hey, so it's been 2 weeks since Abby moved out, and my husband met with her mother this morning to negotiate the custody terms again, and today they finally found out why exactly she didn't want to take her in. Her mother is just as terrible as I had expected, and I can't say that I'm surprised. So apparently, my husband's ex-wife has been working from home for a while for a company based out of LA and has been offered a job there, so she might be moving away in a few weeks. Her plan initially was to just leave without a word, and then we would be forced to take care of Abby because there was nothing much that we could do once she was already gone. However, it got derailed because of what Abby pulled off at the baby shower, and now she was probably going to be stuck taking care of her for the rest of her life. She had a total meltdown, and they had to adjourn the session because they couldn't continue while she was crying and acting crazy. Even the mediator seemed really scared. When my husband came back home and told me about this, he seemed really upset because he felt like his daughter's future was just doomed, and there was nothing he could do to prevent it. I tried to comfort him, but I didn't really know what to say because, in a way, he was right. There really wasn't much that we could do here. Neither parent wants custody, and while my husband had genuine reasons not to want her around right now, her mother's reasons were kind of selfish, but still couldn't be overlooked completely. He had spoken to his lawyer and was told that there was a very real chance that she might end up having to enter the foster care system if neither of them stepped up, and that was a really sad thought. Even though what she did to me was horrible, I still wouldn't wish something like this upon her or anybody else for that matter, because she's just a kid at the end of the day. She has had a rough life, and I don't mean rough because her parents didn't have money or whatever like most people mean it, but rough because her mother used her to get back at her father and didn't really love her, because if her mother did have any love for Abby, she wouldn't have used her like a pawn in her crazy mind games. I don't like that kid if I'm being really honest, but I don't blame her for how she turned out. I blame her mother. She is the root cause of all evil here. I can't believe she had planned to just abandon Abby with us and take off so she could enjoy her fabulous new life in LA. I hope she gets fired or something. She would totally deserve it. Update 3. So, it's been a while, but my husband has finally decided what he's going to do regarding Abby. He made her mother sign away her rights before she left for LA, and I think that it's a really great move because that's going to teach her a lesson that she can't have her cake and eat it too. She was against it at first, but my husband told her that she could either stay here and take care of her daughter or she could choose her fancy new job, and she chose her job. He didn't mince his words and told Abby the truth about why his mother was gone. And now she would have to start rehab to work on her issues, and only then would she be allowed to rejoin the family. He thought that she would protest, but surprisingly, she was quite okay with it. In the past couple of weeks, she has really changed, probably because she realized that her mother never had her best interests at heart in the first place, and she had been played. The only person who had ever been rooting for her was her dad, and now she owed it to him to obey whatever he said and turn over a new leaf. She was a lot more subdued as a person now, and it was quite sad, but I hope that rehab works for her and she comes back better. My husband spoke to his cousin and arranged something for her. It's a 6-month program, so by the time she comes back, my baby will be born. I honestly hope for nothing but the best for Abby. Heaven knows that kid deserves something good to happen now. Update 4. Hi guys, so I just gave birth to our baby boy about 4 weeks ago, and my husband and I are thrilled to share that news with you guys. I feel like you guys have also been an equal part of our journey just as much as our real-life friends. The baby was born healthy, and there were no complications, thankfully. We even allowed Abby to be there for when the baby was born. There has actually been a lot of improvement in the 2 months that she has spent in the rehabilitation center, and I almost feel like she is a normal kid now. The two of us haven't worked past our differences yet. I think we are going to keep that for when she comes back home for good. But she is nice to me whenever we meet and is actively trying to show us that she is not the same psychotic brat that she was up until a couple of months ago. She hasn't said it to me verbally yet, but I can tell that she is trying to make up to us for whatever she put me through just because her mother wanted her to. And I'm looking forward to the day that we can all be a happy family for real now. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Exposed cheating husband to in-laws. Now they've disowned him and are leaving everything to our son. I met him when I was 17 years old. He was 21 at the time. He was stationed at Kaneohe Marine Corps Base in Hawaii. I was living in Mililani, Oahu. I was head over heels in love with him. He had a very muscular build, sexy tattoos, a gorgeous smile, and was so adorable and romantic. After dating for a while, he decided that he was going to be getting out of the military and moving back home to his city. I was so in love with him, so I followed. I was 20 at the time and he was 24. We figured that we would start our lives together. We had a very intimate wedding with just the two of us, and we were so in love. Throughout our relationship, during the early days, we always had issues with him and how he treated other women. My husband is an extremely good-looking man, and I am not just saying this because he's mine. He is flirtatious, charming, and funny. I knew this from the get-go. However, most of the time I could tell him to cut off the women I was concerned about and he'd do it, or at least he would tell me he would cut them off. Our marriage has become rocky recently. I am still madly in love with him, however, I cannot say he feels the same way about me. He tells me he loves my body, me, but I feel like he tells everybody that. Today, I skipped work as I had several panic attacks before my shift and ended up calling in sick. The past few days, I've been having multiple panic attacks a day over my husband and the way he speaks to other women. I've become more aware of him and all his red flags. My husband left earlier for 3 hours without saying a word to me about it. He left his computer on. I walked into our bedroom and saw it. I ignored it at first until my husband came home. He wouldn't answer my questions as to where he was. I was concerned. He got a Snapchat notification, and it went through to his computer while he was downstairs grabbing his clothes out of the dryer and feeding the dog. I checked the notification out of curiosity, hoping it would answer the questions my husband failed to answer, and it did. There were nudes sent by an old friend of his that I recognized by name, and then she texted, "Nice seeing you today, baby X." I added her on Snapchat and asked her if she knew my husband. She told me that he was a friend. She asked me if I was related to him, as my Snapchat is my first and last name with numbers. I took his last name. I proceeded to tell her that me and him are married. She began to apologize as soon as she heard this, saying he had told her he was single with no girlfriend or wife. I was heartbroken. She told me she would have never spoken to him if she knew he was married. He didn't wear the ring when they were out that day. He lied. He lied to her and he lied to me. I confronted my husband, and I have never seen that man so angry. I was afraid of him. I've never been so scared of him before. He was yelling and seemed to have no sympathy for me. Then he dried my tears only to punch the wall multiple times and rip our bedroom door off the hinges. He broke his fist. I had to bring him to the hospital, sat in that waiting room with him for hours, and we barely spoke. Eventually, we got over this fight and things seemed to be normal for a while. Last year, I discovered I was pregnant, and the joy that filled our hearts seemed to signal a turning point in our relationship. My husband, seemingly changed by the prospect of fatherhood, became attentive and supportive. Together, we eagerly anticipated the arrival of our child. When our son was born, a newfound happiness enveloped our little family. For a brief period, it felt like we had overcome the challenges that had plagued us before. Parenthood brought us closer, and my husband's commitment to our family appeared unwavering. However, as time unfolded, cracks began to surface in the facade of our seemingly idyllic life. The signs of his old habits crept back in. The late nights, the secretive behavior, and the subtle distance that emerged between us. I brushed off the nagging doubts, attributing them to the stress of parenting and the inevitable adjustments that accompany a growing family. Last month, my husband asked me to use his phone to open his bank app. I do this all the time, but this time, while scrolling through the app, I saw a new app downloaded on his phone that I didn't recall seeing before. It was a calculator app, which I found strange considering he has an iPhone and iPhones automatically come with a built-in calculator. I didn't know what to make of this, so I just pretended like I didn't see it and made a mental note of the app's default picture so I could look it up myself later. After we went to bed last night, I found the app on my phone. Long story short, it turned out to be an app that's made to look like a calculator, but in reality, it was a hidden photo/video app where you enter a passcode and you can store all your private videos and photos. I felt sick to my stomach, and although I'm not proud of it, when I was sure he was 100% asleep, I took his phone to the bathroom and went through it. I started with his messages and socials and found nothing. The last thing I decided to check was this app. His passcode wasn't hard to figure out. The year our son was born. And it turns out he's been cheating on me with a woman who I assume is his coworker based on the text conversations that were saved for about 7 or so months. As far as I could tell, there were screenshot conversations, nudes of her, and, worst of all, there were photos and videos of them together. Not out and about or anything, just all sexual in nature. I wanted to throw up, but I forced myself to look through them. I knew immediately I needed to make an out for myself and wanted all the information I could get. One video of them in particular made my skin crawl. He works the night shift at his job, and it is starting to get chilly where we live, especially at night. In this particular video, he was being the slimy, dirty cheater he is with her in the car we share. To keep it short, they were in the passenger seat, and she was on top of him. In the video, she mentioned being cold, and the slimeball paused, reached into the back seat, and grabbed our toddler son's blanket and wrapped it around her. I was shaking at this point and could not watch any further, as this crossed a line in my brain that almost made me snap. But somehow I remained calm, took all the evidence, put his phone back, and went to sleep in our son's room for the rest of the night. It's the next morning, and it's taking everything in me not to blow up on him, but I want to hit him where it hurts the most. I immediately contacted a divorce lawyer so I could leave him eventually. Meanwhile, I reached out to his parents, telling them about their cheating son. For context, my mother-in-law had been cheated on in her last relationship when she was married to my husband's birth dad. A few years later, when his birth dad had passed away because of cancer, she eventually met and married Sean, who had helped raise my husband since he was just a kid when his dad passed away. I knew that I needed to share the painful truth about their son's infidelity, a conversation I never imagined having. After making the call, we arranged to meet at their home. As I stepped inside, the tension in the air was palpable. His parents greeted me with warm smiles, unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. I took a deep breath, gathering the strength to reveal the heartbreaking reality of their son's actions. Sitting down with them, I began with a heavy heart. I need to talk to you about something difficult. It's about your son, and I don't know how else to say it, but he's been unfaithful. The initial shock on their faces mirrored the shock I had felt upon discovering the betrayal. His mother's eyes widened, and his father's expression shifted from welcoming to a mix of concern and disbelief. I continued, laying out the evidence that exposed the affair, the pain evident in every word I spoke. His mother, visibly upset, listened intently, occasionally glancing at his father as if seeking confirmation that this was a nightmare they could all wake up from. As I presented the screenshots, messages, and images, the room seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. After the initial shock settled, his mother spoke, her voice a mix of anger and sadness. I can't believe he would do this. How long has this been going on? I shared the timeline, and her disappointment deepened. His stepfather, normally composed, struggled to find words, his silence conveying a complex mix of emotions. He can't get away with this, she asserted. The pain in her voice revealed her personal history with infidelity, and the echo of past betrayal seemed to intensify the gravity of the situation. She leaned in, and with a tone that carried the weight of past experiences, said, "You can't let him get away with this. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to our family. He has a son now and still chose to destroy this marriage. He needs to face the consequences of his actions." Her words hung in the air, urging me to take a stand against the betrayal. As the gravity of the situation settled in, she looked at me and suggested something that caught me off guard. What if we expose his affair on my 50th birthday? It's a gathering of our closest friends and family. It might sound extreme, but sometimes the truth needs to be laid bare for everyone to see. Surprised by the proposal, I hesitated, unsure about the implication of such a public revelation. She continued, "I know it's unconventional, but sometimes drastic situations call for unconventional measures. This way, he won't be able to deny or escape from what he's done." As her words sank in, I felt a mix of apprehension and empowerment. The idea of exposing the truth in such a public manner seemed daunting, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it might be the only way to ensure he faced the consequences of his actions. Taking a deep breath, I agreed, "All right, let's do it. If that's what it takes to make him understand the gravity of his choices, I'm willing to go through with it." With a nod, his mother assured me, "We'll support you every step of the way. He can't keep hurting you like this." Little did I know that her suggestion would set in motion a series of events that would ultimately reveal the truth to everyone gathered on that fateful 50th birthday celebration. In the days leading up to the party, I meticulously crafted a PowerPoint presentation that would expose his affair. But as I worked on it, I had a change of heart. Instead of focusing solely on the incriminating evidence, I decided to showcase the beautiful moments we had shared over the years. I sent the presentation to his parents, trusting them to share it at the party. I also diligently collaborated with my divorce lawyer so I could serve my husband with divorce papers during the party. It was a well-thought-out strategy to make the impact even bigger, making sure the consequences of his actions hit both emotionally and legally. Amidst the birthday celebration, the room brimmed with a festive atmosphere, blissfully ignorant of the storm brewing beneath the surface. As laughter and chatter echoed, my mother-in-law, the unsuspecting hostess, rose from her seat, commanding the attention of the room with a genuine smile. She began her speech, expressing gratitude for the journey that had brought her to the milestone of turning 50. Thank you all for being here today. It's a special day for me, reflecting on the ups and downs, the joys and the challenges that have shaped these past 5 decades. She shared, her words casting a warm nostalgia over the gathering. As the crowd attentively listened, she shifted the focus toward my husband, the golden child in her narrative. Now let's talk about my son, she continued, a proud gleam in her eyes. I can't express how proud I am of the man he's become. He's achieved so much, and I'm especially grateful for the wonderful woman he's chosen to share his life with. The room buzzed with agreement, acknowledging the love and joy we had supposedly brought into each other's lives. It was a seamlessly crafted transition, luring everyone into a false sense of security before the unveiling of a harsh reality. However, as she spoke, her tone subtly shifted. But life is not always as simple as we wish it to be, she began, her expression clouding with a mix of disappointment and determination. The air in the room tensed as she continued. It pains me to say this, but I've recently discovered something about my son that has left me deeply disappointed. The room hushed, an uneasy silence settling in. The unexpected revelation hung in the air as she expertly navigated towards the PowerPoint presentation. To truly understand what I'm talking about, she said, her voice steady, I need you all to see for yourselves. With a few clicks, the screen transitioned, and the atmosphere shifted from celebratory to somber. Conversations between my husband and his affair partner materialized, exposing the hidden truth. Gasps and whispers spread like wildfire as the shocking reality of his infidelity became painfully apparent. Throughout this revelation, my husband's initial composure wavered. His eyes widened in disbelief, and a subtle bead of sweat formed on his forehead. The room, once filled with celebration, now crackled with an uncomfortable energy. His mother, undeterred by the discomfort, forged ahead. I never thought I'd see the day when my own son would follow in the footsteps of his bio dad, a man who hurt me deeply with his betrayal, she admitted, her disappointment palpable. The weight of her words lingered, casting a shadow over the room. Amid the unsettling revelation, my mother-in-law, with a steely resolve, decided to address another matter of utmost importance. It's not just about exposing the truth, she declared, her gaze unwavering. I've reached a milestone myself, turning 50, and it's prompted me to reevaluate certain aspects of my life. The room, still reeling from the shock of the affair unveiling, shifted its attention toward her. With a firm voice, she continued, I've decided it's time to make some changes, starting with my will. The gravity of her words hung in the air, a subtle tension building as the guests exchanged curious glances. As of today, she proclaimed, I have updated my will, and I want to make it clear that my son will not be included in it. Gasps of surprise rippled through the room, mirroring the shockwaves of the preceding revelation. My husband's expression shifted from disbelief to a mix of hurt and confusion. She went on, her tone unwavering, I've decided to leave everything to our grandson. The weight of her announcement settled, the implications echoing through the room. The crowd processed the significance of her choice, and a newfound tension permeated the atmosphere. Adding to the weight of the moment, his stepdad spoke up, his words cutting through the charged air. I agree with her decision, he affirmed, his gaze firm. Even my assets will be going to our grandson, not you. The room, already laden with tension, now bore witness to a unanimous declaration, leaving my husband grappling not only with the repercussions of his actions, but also with a collective disapproval of those closest to him. I then stepped forward towards my husband, who looked like a deer caught in headlights, holding out the divorce papers to him. The room fell into a tense silence as all eyes shifted to the unfolding drama. His shock transformed into desperation as he attempted to plead and explain his actions, but the weight of the evidence left him struggling for words. "I can explain. Please, just hear me out," he stammered, his voice filled with a desperate urgency. His eyes, once filled with confidence, now reflected a vulnerability that only intensified as the seconds ticked by. In response to his plea, I couldn't suppress a bitter laugh, the culmination of the pain and betrayal echoing in the sound. "Explain? After all the lies and deceit?" I retorted, my voice carrying a mix of disdain and hurt. "This was your very last chance, and you squandered it." His attempts to justify his actions fell on deaf ears as I extended the divorce papers to him. Leaving the party, a sense of satisfaction washed over me, knowing that my in-laws had imparted a valuable lesson to my husband. It was an acknowledgement that he would finally grasp the consequences of his despicable actions. Since that moment, my husband has persistently called and messaged me, lamenting that I've destroyed his life. He continued to say that it was because of me his parents went a bit too far to punish him. So, Reddit AITA for exposing my cheating husband and helping his parents to expose his deceitful ways even though they might have gone a bit too far? Update 1. Hey everyone. So, after the epic birthday party reveal, I decided it was time to make some major changes. I knew I needed to move out and reached out to my brothers and parents to help me move. With their help, I packed my bags and moved out of that toxic environment. As I was in the process of moving out, my ex-husband, perhaps sensing the gravity of the situation, confronted me with a desperate plea. His eyes, once filled with confidence and charm, now reflected a mix of regret and urgency. He begged me to reconsider, attempting to articulate explanations for his actions and promises of change. The weight of his words hung in the air as he grasped at straws to salvage what was left of our shattered relationship. This time, I stood firm, unwavering in my resolve to break free from the cycle of betrayal and heartache. Despite his passionate pleas, I held my ground, expressing the depth of the pain he had caused me. However, he didn't relent, persistently calling me and my parents, begging for another chance. In response, my older brother stepped in, delivering a stern warning for him to cease his efforts. We took the necessary steps to block him from our phones, ensuring that the only place our paths would cross moving forward would be in the courtroom. Update 2. So a few weeks after the dramatic birthday party revelation, my mother-in-law hit me with some unexpected news. Turns out, my ex-husband decided to make a surprise visit to her doorstep, all in a desperate attempt to win back a spot in the family will. Well, that plan crashed and burned. The situation escalated quickly. Tensions rose, and words were exchanged as my mother-in-law firmly stood her ground. It didn't take long for things to get heated, and the need to involve law enforcement became apparent. The situation reached a boiling point. She and his stepdad had to drop the threat of calling the police just to coax him into leaving. I think my ex-husband is slowly losing his mind. Update 3. Hello, Reddit family. It's been 7 months since my last update, and the journey through the divorce proceedings has been nothing short of intense. The divorce stuff has been pretty tough, but the proof I had on my husband and his affairs has really helped my case a lot. He obviously tried to fight hard at first, saying nasty things and trying to make me look bad. But my strong evidence, like his messages, videos, and pictures, showed the truth. Eventually, he and his lawyers stopped with their tricks. As the legal process moves forward, my main focus has been on taking care of our son. He's the best part of my life, and I always make sure that he is okay. Even with all the legal stuff, I keep looking forward and staying strong for our son. Throughout this tough time, my ex-Emil has been my rock. Her support and understanding have meant a lot during this time. I am really thankful for her strength and the family-like atmosphere she continues to maintain with me despite my divorcing her son. Despite all the ups and downs, she has ensured our son has a stable and loving environment. She's more than just a mother-in-law. She's a reliable ally when things get tough, making this challenging journey a bit easier to handle. Update 4. So, it's been a month since my last update, and things have taken an unexpected turn. Last month, when I posted this, I was still going through the legal proceedings and expected this to go on for a long while. But surprisingly, this week I have learned from my lawyer that my ex has agreed to all my demands and my request for child support. It turns out that my ex has given in to finalizing the divorce because apparently he has met someone and that's pushing him to finalize things quickly. To be honest, I am okay with how it's all shaping up, and I don't care if he has met someone new so quickly. I have reached a point where I just want to move on and not deal with any more drama. During our last court meeting, he actually came up to me trying to say sorry. It was a bit awkward, but I guess he felt the need to apologize. I listened, not sure if I believed him or not. Here's pretty much how our conversation went. Ex-husband. Look, I've been doing a lot of thinking and I realize I messed up big time. I'm sorry for everything that I put you through. Me. What brought this on all of a sudden? Ex-husband. I've been going to therapy, trying to figure myself out, and I've come to realize that what I did to you was not okay. I wanted to apologize to you so we don't end things on a bad note. Me therapy, huh? Wow, that's new. Ex-husband, yeah. I messed up with us. I never should have done what I did. I want you to know I regret it. I don't want our son to grow up and hate me for destroying our family. Me, well, when the time comes, our son can decide things for himself. We will obviously have to tell him the truth one day. I could see the sincerity in his face, and he then went on to say how he hoped I would eventually forgive him so we could be good co-parents to our son. I nodded in understanding and walked away after wishing him good luck. I feel so free since the divorce has been finalized. No more walking on eggshells. No more sleepless nights wondering about loyalty and honesty. The weight of toxicity lifted, leaving room for new beginnings and a sense of liberation. With the legality settled and my ex-husband agreeing to the terms, the chapter of our tumultuous marriage is finally closed. It's like stepping into a world where I can finally breathe freely and make decisions for myself and my son without the constant shadow of betrayal. My ex-Mil has invited me and our entire family out to have lunch with her and her husband this coming week so we can celebrate my divorce. It's heartening to see that she still holds love for both me and my son and continues to embrace us as part of her family. Moving forward, I am committed to ensuring that my son grows up surrounded by these uplifting influences only. I hope he grows up to be a better man than my ex-husband in the future. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My girlfriend, F26, and I, M29, found out in August that we were going to be parents to our first child. I refused my sister's offer to pay for the gender reveal. Generally, everyone was very happy about the news. However, because of the shock, I felt at the time it wasn't planned. I called my mother for reassurance, and it helped. She wasn't happy I told her over a phone call, which I understand and I'm likely an ass for. I apologized and we put it behind us. My sister has been supportive. She helped us move to a new house and wanted to take my partner out baby shopping in a few weeks. However, my mother was less helpful. We had a FaceTime mid-August about housing options, and then my mother randomly asked me if my partner was on the pill. I said yes, and I've seen her take it, and she asked if I was sure, almost like she was insinuating that I was baby-trapped. I have had worries about my sister. I'm happy she's excited, but I feel sometimes she's too much. She was talking about having the baby every weekend, so we could do stuff as a couple. And I said we have to consider both families. She was also concerned about us moving a bit closer to my girlfriend's family than mine. She said I wouldn't get as much support and questioned the support from my partner's family, as her mother lives 2 hours away. I said she comes down every weekend to look after her mother with dementia. We'll be fine. My sister offered to pay for our gender reveal scan. We both thought this was a lovely gesture and said yes. My sister, understandably, wanted to come because she's paying for it. My sister told me that the one she was booking allowed up to 5 people to come and suggested we bring my mom along. I then said if she's coming, then my girlfriend's mom should come too. She disagreed because it's the only involvement they'll have during the pregnancy, and my girlfriend's family will be at other events. We said it's not about who we're including. It's about having support during a personal appointment, and my girlfriend doesn't want only all my family there. My mom previously said either it's just my family or no scan. I said, fine, we'll pay for it ourselves. My sister then messaged my girlfriend to explain her reasoning, which left her in tears. She also said my family likes to do things separately and they're a bit antisocial. They think meeting my girlfriend's mom at the scan will be awkward. We think this kind of reasoning is selfish and not putting our wishes first. My mom and sister are getting me to understand their reasoning. I do understand it, I just don't agree with it. My girlfriend's mom isn't bothered by them not wanting her there, just more by how it's affected us. She told me not to worry about them and hugged me. She said she's happy to pay for it and for me to invite whoever I want. This is a post here because despite many agreements about our side of things, I have doubt because my sister was going to pay for it. I was considering my dad, but my girlfriend's mom believes that would anger my family. Some more information. To elaborate on a few things, the phone call with my mom wasn't an initial reaction of, how dare I tell her on the phone? She was happy and said congrats. Based on if we were deciding to keep it at the time, it was only found out. She wasn't too happy when we recorded my sister's reaction. At this event, I told my mother that I was driving to my dad's to see him the next day. My mom doesn't think my dad does enough for me. We see each other rarely in person, maybe like once or twice a year, but we get on fine. It was his first time being a grandfather and my mother's fourth time. My sister has 3 kids already. She's desperate for a fourth of her own, but my husband keeps telling her no. My mom, when I mentioned this, suggested just FaceTiming him, but I said no. Then she said, so he gets a live surprise and I get a phone call? I told her I needed initial support and sorry she found out this way. People have asked, what's the situation with my dad? Him and my mom have been divorced for 24 years. He wasn't the kindest to my mother at the time, and I had a stepmother who kept driving a wedge between my dad and I, who has been out of the picture for a few years now. I've told him about this situation, and he thinks they're being ridiculous. I get people telling me I need a backbone, and yet it's something I've worked harder in therapy to get over. To provide a little backstory, I was an impressionable kid who was suspected of autism at a young age. My mom refused to take me to get assessed because she felt at the time that I should learn alongside the other neurotypical kids. This obviously didn't work because I constantly questioned myself, and with the aid of people like my sister reminding me of little mistakes I made, it continued to knock my confidence back. It was only until a breakup which happened when I was 23, in a downward spiral of depression, did I get more help. Doctors said I didn't have autism, but more anxiety. Mom and sister insist I do because they think I'll get more support, but linking it with stuff in this post, it feels like grooming, and I have pushed back on several occasions to just let me be. I get comments about how something I did was an autistic thing, which I said, stop, to. My sister has 2 kids diagnosed with autism and 1 kid with ADHD, and she works for an autism charity. I went on Prozac after being diagnosed with anxiety and depression. I was also with an ex at a different time and saw subtle controlling methods through that, and we didn't work out. Afterward, that was something my family helped me through, but I'm getting that narcissistic people can often not get along with other narcissistic people because they'll try and expose the other person to make themselves look better. So, my growing up was conflicted because on one hand there was nitpicking and on the other, care that seemed genuine. My mom has also suffered abusive relationships and grief through the death of a partner, so I pinned weird behavior on that. Same with my sister, who had a stillbirth. There's a comment somewhere in here which explains a list of stuff my sister did a few years ago, which stopped her going to my mom and stepdad's wedding. And now I'm with a beautiful human being to start a family with, and while it's a shame my family couldn't be cooperative and understanding, she and our baby come first, and we need each other first and foremost. No one is dictating to us about who cares for them or anything else. I called my mom out for what she said about the baby trap. She apologized to me, but not to my partner, who overheard the conversation. Ever since then, she's been distant. Writing this now, I'm wondering to myself why I'm even letting her come to the scan if my partner's mom comes after her behavior. My mom backpedals a lot. Says something that would annoy or upset someone and then says it was a joke. I have since told her there was backpedaling, but she's denied it. My mom's weird views on separating from my partner's family stems from her own anxiety. I believe. We believe she's on the spectrum, but she's in denial about it. We've seen moments of her having some sensory overload moments, being obsessed with specific topics, mostly conspiracy theories, lack of a filter at times, and struggle to see things from others' point of view. My sister, I believe, wants to be seen as the best guardian/parents and sees her family as a threat. Update 1. My sister's reaction to me setting my boundaries. Hi all. Quick update, but a fair bit has happened in the last 24 hours, and it isn't good. First of all, thank you to everyone for your advice. I took it on board, especially the stuff about setting our boundaries now and not taking any more manipulation. There were some people questioning the need for a reveal scan. We just thought it would be nice for our first child. I understand that's not for everyone's liking, but that's what we want to do. Anyway, my sister called me on Sunday. I explained that my girlfriend should be allowed to have whomever she wants there. She reiterated the awkwardness of it at the scan, so I suggested a coffee meetup, which she said she'd chat to my mom about. My mom turned it down and said it was too formal. In her words, "I'm sure I'll meet them someday." She suggested we have 2 separate scans for each of the family. I turned this down because I thought it was gross. My girlfriend is not a test subject for other people's enjoyment. Then I said, "We'll book our own and invite who we want or have it just us." She then turned passive-aggressive and said, "Fine, you do what you want. I've been nothing but supportive, and my girlfriend is going to want her family there for everything." I said this isn't true. She said she wants both families involved. Knowing that they'd continue to try and make offers for the scan, I sent them a long message to both of them in a group chat. I've added the screenshots on the Insane Siblings subreddit, which you can see on my profile. As you can see in the reply from my sister, she attempted to gaslight me into feeling bad after she said, "We part ways." I blocked her on everything. I'm not having that kind of influence in my life and certainly not subjecting my girlfriend to it, especially if they're not going to respect our boundaries. My mom called me a short time after and told me my message was condescending, cold, and formal, and didn't understand why I was overreacting about the scan. She told me to not interrupt even a message I sent to her, which was among the same lines as the one in the screenshot. I told her it's not just about the scan. It's about her over-involvement in general. Clearly, my sister left details out because she didn't know about my sister wanting to look after the baby every weekend and being insecure about the support from my girlfriend's family. She said we should all meet up to chat. I'm not having them bully me, though. If I'm there to chat, I'm having someone in my corner. She said she didn't want us arguing, but I said the ball is in my sister's court. My mom is attempting to play peacekeeper and has sided with my sister's erratic behavior, so neither of them I really trust. As for the scan, my girlfriend and I have booked our own scan, and we're having a reveal party next weekend where everyone is welcome. Although right now, I'm not inviting my mom and sister. I've explained the situation to my dad, and he's disgusted at them. My sister and I have different dads. Edit. Sorry, I forgot to add. You're right that I should not have apologized to my mom for how I broke the news to her. She often comments on how my dad doesn't come down to see me and it's mostly me going up there. My dad and I do talk, and when I go up there he often wants to pay for everything, no questions asked. I don't take this for granted, of course. I get rounds of beer in or chip in for the takeaway. Either way, I'm happy with the relationship my dad and I have. We've had issues in the past, but we move forward. Also re-uploaded a screenshotted text message reply from my sister to my profile since it keeps getting taken down on the sub for spam, although Reddit kept blanking the images, so I've added an in-link in them. Text message. Hi both. Just wanted to update you on the scan. We've booked one ourselves, and who goes depends on who wants to come. This isn't something girlfriend's name has said. This is something I've told girlfriend's name, as she's the one carrying the baby and she wants support from both families. But arguments about something we should be in charge of have made it difficult. It's our time and our family we're starting. We should be the ones making decisions. trying to convince us to change our minds after we turn down the extra conditions without any compromise over meeting beforehand hasn't been appreciated. It's overstepping, if I'm honest. We haven't talked much, Mom, but from what's been discussed, I assume you both share the same viewpoint. Any future events, such as the shower events, will be one event for each where close friends and family can come. You're still welcome to come, including the reveal we have after the scan next weekend. We're not doing two separate events for each family. Not only is it more money, but more time spent setting up multiple events/attending them, and I see no reason why either family has to be excluded from events that girlfriend's name and I are involved in. The family and I are creating. You may not spend time with family, but that's for different reasons. You don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. I get on fine with family. I may fall out with one or two people, who knows, and girlfriend's name gets on fine with family. Other members of the family also have no issue being in their company. This is more of a personal issue than it is an unwritten rule, and if you don't want to go to these events because family might be there, then don't. It's a shame to not see you there, but these events are for our child, not to appease everyone else. You don't have to talk to her family. Just be there for us and respect what we want to do. These issues of shutting out her family are creating concern for what happens when the baby arrives. You've said before about how we'll get better support from my family than hers. It's not a contest of who can provide the best support. The best support the child can get is from us, the parents. I'm not deciding which family is the best. I respect and love each person individually and would like support from her family too. It feels like unfair judgment is being placed on them without actually knowing them. And please do not text about this stuff or ring to talk to me about this. This is creating stress that she doesn't need being pregnant, and that isn't good for the baby. She was in tears when she read your message, as we just want this pregnancy to go smoothly. If we are being told what we should be doing in regards to our own baby, then that's not influence we want to have. We appreciate support, but we don't want over-involvement in this. This is what we want and what makes us happy. Please respect that. The sisters reply, well, what a stab in the gut. I can't breathe with how much I'm crying. So cold. You have interpreted so many things incorrectly. But there you go. I hope everything works out for you. I will always love you, but I think this is where we part ways. Update 2. When your mom enables your sister's actions. For more context, I have posted a story on AITA and the message I sent to both of them following the advice I was given from both the subreddit as well as my dad and my girlfriend. Initially, this sparked because my sister wanted to pay for a gender reveal scan for both of us, which we initially said yes to, and then later wanted my mom to come, and I said no because it's all my family in the room and none of my girlfriends, which I don't think is fair. My sister tried to convince me, saying it's something special that they get a chance to be involved with because my girlfriend will mostly have her family involved with the rest. We haven't excluded them from anything at all. They just don't want to associate with my girlfriend's family in any capacity. I set my boundaries out in the message yesterday, saying we just want everyone to be included. We're not asking anyone to be friends. Immediately got told that my message was cold and that I made her cry, as well as us parting ways. This isn't the first time she's reacted like this. She showed troubling behavior in regards to the whole pregnancy, said hurtful things to me a few years ago when she became addicted to medical pills like me not crying at her daughter's funeral. She had a stillbirth and I was 16. Clearly, a troubling time, but not healthy for me. She pressed on me getting an autism diagnosis, including that I have way more struggles compared to everyone else. If I made any little mistake, like drop a sweet wrapper on the floor or use my auntie's showed towels to try by mistake, she'd chew me out for it. I've talked about all of this in therapy, specifically CBT. What was always conflicting was genuine help she'd give, as well as my mom, many times. But it always felt like something was wanted in return, because if I ever said no to something, she'd reiterate that she does everything for me and would call me selfish if I didn't. I wasn't the best. I'd forget birthday gifts, mainly when being an adult. She'd ask for money and had a go at me because I was concerned about her constantly asking. She said if I gave her money, I could consider it her other daughter's birthday present. She has 3 kids. My mom, on the other hand, had a bad relationship with my father, which I was told was abusive. I saw signs, but it's something my father denies when I've asked him. They divorced when I was 5. It's just strange that at this time, it's my dad putting no pressure on me whatsoever and saying, "My baby, my choice." She had another partner who was also abusive and lasted for about 4 years. Later had a partner who died of a drug overdose and now has been married to my stepdad for 8 years. I get life was difficult for her. I was a messy child. I couldn't use the kitchen to cook a lot out of avoiding making a mess, and everything had to be pristine. If I felt I wasn't being listened to and I tried to make a point, she'd shut me down and say, "I don't want to argue." She would complain if I asked to be picked up from anywhere, so my sister often did it. Any school trip where the kids' parents needed to accompany them, she'd completely avoided and I was there on my own, and another parent had to look after me. She forgot to pick me up from school a few times because she was napping. She didn't like a friend I hung out with and told me to tell him he was not welcome to a gig we were going to. His parents hated me after that. Even as an adult, if I'm upset by something she's done, she'll half apologize, call me, and say, "Are you calm now?" A friend of the family died and left his house to my mom and her 2 sisters in her will. They sold it. One of my aunties gave £5,000 to her 2 kids. My sister questioned this and told me that my mom said she's put it towards us as a rainy day fund. I don't even know what to believe from my sister, to be honest. My mom hasn't even told me about the money. It's not about the money. It's about the lack of trust and treating me like an idiot. Fast forward to now, my mom rung me yesterday after I sent the message to them both. She said my message was condescending. Asked what the big deal about the scan is. My sister must have called her and failed to mention the pressure to get us to change our minds and all the other stuff. She genuinely believes my sister's text, despite them falling out a few years ago because my sister stole £5,000 off her to buy random stuff, stole £200 off my nan for prescription drugs off the internet, wanted to use my mom's house for her affair with someone, and other hurtful things said. My mom wanted me to meet her and my sister for a coffee to sort this out, but there's nothing to sort out except an apology and accepting our boundaries, and they can't even do that. Update 3. A few more updates since my last update. Both my mom and sister have contacted me via text. I borrowed £50 from my sister to help fix my car. My girlfriend and I spent a lot of time moving, and my tire blew. Good timing. I said I'd pay her back on payday, which was Thursday. Her text asked me for the money back and also said, "I sent that money and I have kids to feed." Basically trying to make me out to be a thief. I suspected it was to try and get a reaction out of me, but I silently paid her back the money and left it at that. I want my distance from her, but I'm not a thief. Then she texted my girlfriend, even though in my long message I added on, I explicitly told them not to message her in regards to this stuff. The message said she hopes the scan went well. She thinks it was this weekend for some reason, even though she was originally going to book it for the 15th, and then we have it booked for the 15th. She also told her not to be upset about any of this, and wants us both to be happy. I suspect that she's fishing for information, and it's clear she cares more about the baby than our own relationship. My girlfriend hasn't responded. My nan texted me earlier in the week because of the issues with Reddit uploading my images. I'll post the contents of the chat here. I hardly ever involve myself, but I love you all and want to put it right before. Sister knew all the people in school. I went to every meeting with her. She feels socially shy meeting new people, so like mom, I was her comfort blanket. I now stepped back. Please mend this rift. I think she realizes that you need space. She asked, breaking her heart. Hold out your hand. Her intentions were good, you made your point, but she adores you and thinks a lot of my girlfriend. My love to you both always. Please send this rift for me. I left it a day, but I replied back that it's not my job to mend a rift. I don't want any breakups in the family, but I want my space. They've hurt me and controlled me too many times, and I'm not putting up with it anymore. My nan replied saying she understands and won't take sides. My mom messaged me yesterday morning saying she hopes I'm okay, and also thinking the scan was this weekend, saying she's away so wouldn't be able to make it. She wanted to come but is now away, lol. She wanted to catch up in the week and talk. Nothing more than that. But it doesn't look like either of them have any remorse for the way they behaved. Now on to the next story. Story 6. On my 18th birthday, my grandpa surprised me with a life-changing gift. He gave me a pretty huge amount of money to invest in my dream business. I had always wanted to start a custom stationery and office supplies business. From personalized planners to branded office kits, I ended up really getting into it in 2020 because I had nothing much to do. I love stationery and graphic design, and I had a small online business, but I really wanted to expand it and make it into something I could live off. I knew there was potential, especially with small companies needing affordable customized products. I had the vision mapped out, the suppliers listed, and even some sample designs. That money from Grandpa was the final push I needed to bring my dream to life. But things didn't go as planned. Around that time, my brother, 31M, had been out of work for almost 2 years. He jumped from job to job, but nothing ever stuck. Mostly because my brother cannot, for the life of him, follow rules. He'd always sleep in or not go to work without informing anyone. Not to mention, he also had dropped out of college and never really got his act together. He'd been floating from one bad decision to another, and my parents were constantly supporting him. They would pay his bills, buy him things, and let him stay with them without any responsibility. The guy was 26 at the time and still living off them without a care in the world. It was frustrating to watch him blow every opportunity and rely on my parents to bail him out. According to them, he was just going through a rough patch and would get back on his feet soon. However, this rough patch seemed to stretch on forever. I can literally tell you that I have been watching this behavior of his ever since he turned 16. When my parents found out about my birthday gift, everything changed. They wouldn't stop pressuring me to loan my brother the entire amount. They said that he was struggling because he was behind on bills and needed money to avoid getting evicted. Every time I said no, they made me feel like I was the worst person alive. They'd call me selfish and say that I owed it to him since family helps family. I finally gave in, but it wasn't because I thought it was the right thing to do. It was because the guilt became too heavy to carry. I figured my brother would pay me back soon, and I'd still have time to get my business off the ground. The next day, I woke up thinking maybe I'd done a good thing by helping my brother out. But before I even had a chance to feel good about it, my parents dropped another bombshell on me. They asked me to start paying them $2,000 in rent. Apparently, turning 18 meant I needed to start contributing to the household, even though I was still in school, had no job, and had just given my entire startup fund to my brother. It was like I was being punished for doing what they wanted in the first place. That's when everything hit me. They never cared about me or my dreams. They only saw me as a way to fix my brother's mess. I felt completely used, like my needs and goals were never something that they cared about or even attempted to know. I packed my things and left that week. I told myself I couldn't keep living like that, where I was just a backup plan for everyone else. I went no contact, and see, with my parents and brother from that day forward. The next few years were tough, but I poured everything I had into making my business a reality. I worked on jobs while continuing to slowly build my company online and attend college at the same time. I designed logos, custom planners, office kits, and all of that, and eventually began partnering with small businesses that wanted my products. Things picked up faster than I expected. In year 2, I opened a small store, and by year 5, I had 2 locations and an amazing online presence. Then, out of the blue, my parents reached out. I hadn't spoken to them in years, so this was a shock. They were being really vague about why they wanted to talk, but after a while, they finally admitted that my brother was in some serious trouble. They were vague about it, but they told me that my brother was in a lot of trouble and that things had spiraled beyond what they could handle. They wouldn't say exactly what kind of trouble he was in, only that it was serious and that he desperately needed help getting out of it. They told me they were willing to pay me back double the amount I had loaned him years ago if I could step in and fix things. That caught me off guard. The way they said it, it wasn't just about money. They wanted me to use my business connections to help him out. I didn't know the full story, but from what I pieced together, it sounded like my brother had racked up gambling debts, failed in another business venture, and may have been involved in something illegal. They were hoping that since my company worked with a variety of businesses, maybe I could pull some strings and find him a job. Couldn't believe it. After everything they did, they had the nerve to come back and ask for more. They hadn't reached out to congratulate me on my success or even check on how I was doing. The only reason they were contacting me now was because they wanted me to fix my brother's problems again. I was furious but also just really sad. It was like nothing had changed. They still only cared about my brother, and I was still just a tool they could use when things got bad. I thought about it for a moment. Like, I really thought about it. Could I help my brother? Honestly, yes. With the connections I had built in my industry, I probably could have found him some kind of work or opportunity. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. They didn't reach out to check in, and not to mention, my brother never once tried to make things right with me or even acknowledge the fact that he essentially stole from me. He also had our parents come up to me instead of asking me for help himself. I knew that if I stepped in now, I'd be setting myself on fire to keep them warm. They hadn't changed. They still saw me as a backup plan for my brother's failures, and I wasn't about to let history repeat itself. I told them no. I'm not going to sacrifice what I've worked so hard for to bail out my brother. He made his choices, and I'm not responsible for cleaning up his mess. They tried to guilt-trip me again, talking about family and how I was in a good place now so I could afford to help. But I stood my ground. I've worked too hard to let them drag me back into their drama. I don't owe them anything, especially after the way they treated me. It's been a week since I told them no, and I haven't heard from them since. I'm starting to feel bad about it. I know it's not my responsibility, but part of me feels guilty for not helping. After all, my brother is still my family. And yeah, I know that I said that I wouldn't let their guilting tactic work on me, but I don't know, it's starting to eat away at me and I feel like I'm going crazy. I guess I just need someone to tell me that I'm doing the right thing. So, AITA for not helping my parents and brother out because of something they did to me 5 years ago? Update 1. Hey everyone, I'm back with an update. It's been 3 weeks since I posted, and I've had some time to think things through. First off, I really appreciate all the responses, even the ones that didn't agree with me. It gave me a lot to consider. I noticed a few questions came up in the comments, so I'll try to address them before getting into the latest developments. Some of you asked if my parents specifically asked me for money when they reached out. No, they didn't ask for money outright. What they wanted was for me to use my business connections to help my brother. Apparently, his problems are a lot deeper than I initially thought. I don't know all the details, my parents were vague, but from what I gathered, my brother is involved in some kind of debt that's too big to fix with just cash. They think that my contacts in the business world can help him out of the mess. Honestly, I know that's just another way of theirs to drag me back into his chaos. Others asked if I felt guilty about cutting contact with him years ago or if I ever missed my brother. I mean, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't hard at first. I felt guilty for a long time, wondering if I was a bad person for walking away from my family. But with time, I realized that staying in contact only enabled their behavior. And as for missing my brother? No, not really. The relationship was always one-sided, with me giving and him taking. And lastly, a lot of you asked why I even gave my brother the money. To be honest, I know that was a very dumb decision, but you have to understand that I was only 18. I was still in high school and living with my parents. They never gave up on pressuring me to give my brother the money. I still have no idea how they found out about the money in the first place, but from the moment I woke up in the morning to when I went to sleep at night, that was all my parents talked about. They used every tactic they knew to make me feel guilty about not helping him. I kept some of the amount Grandpa gave me, but most of it I gave my brother because of how guilty my parents made me feel. Now, on to what happened recently. After my parents reached out asking for help, they went radio silent for about a week. I figured they gave up on me and found someone else to bail my brother out. But then, out of nowhere, they invited me to dinner to talk things through. I debated whether or not to go. Part of me thought it might bring closure if I faced them in person, but I also knew it would probably just be another guilt trip. In the end, I decided to go, not because I wanted to help, but because I wanted to see if anything had really changed. Spoiler alert, it hasn't. The dinner was at a local restaurant, which I found odd since my parents usually insisted on hosting things at home. I arrived and they were already seated, and they were looking weirdly happy to see me. The whole vibe felt forced, like as if they were trying too hard to act normal. At first, things were civil. We exchanged some polite small talk, and I almost started to think maybe they were actually trying to reconnect without any ulterior motives. But that hope didn't last long. About halfway through dinner, the real reason I was invited came up. They weren't asking for money, but they still wanted me to use my success to help my brother. They said that since my business has connections with investors and some people in the financial world, I could make a few introductions that might help straighten things out for him. It wasn't an ask for cash, but it was still a favor I didn't want to get involved in. I could feel that old, familiar feeling creeping back, the same feeling I had when they pressured me to give my brother the loan years ago. And just when I thought the conversation couldn't get worse, my brother showed up. He wasn't even supposed to be there, at least they never mentioned that he'd be joining us. He just walked in, looking smug and acting like he owned the place. From the moment he sat down, it was clear he hadn't changed one bit. He was loud, arrogant, and completely unapologetic about the mess he'd gotten himself into. It was as if he expected me to roll out the red carpet and fix everything for him. He also, for some reason, acted like I owed him. He actually had the audacity to suggest that since I was so lucky with my business, it was only fair that I help him out, like I should feel grateful for the opportunity he's given me to do good. He even made snide comments about how my business wouldn't have taken off if I hadn't loaned him the money back then. He genuinely thought that his failure somehow contributed to my success. Can you believe that? It took everything in me not to walk out right then and there. But that dinner was the final nail in the coffin for me. I realized that nothing had changed. My parents are still enabling my brother, and he's still the same entitled, selfish person he's always been. They're not looking for help because they care about me or respect how far I've gotten. They just see me as a solution to a problem they don't want to deal with themselves. After that dinner, I went straight home and blocked their numbers. I thought I'd feel guilty, but honestly, I just feel relieved. For the first time in a long time, I know I made the right decision. That's where things stand right now. I've cut them off for good this time, and I feel at peace with my decision. I know some people might think I'm being harsh, but I've learned the hard way that setting boundaries is necessary, especially with family. I'm finally putting myself first, and it feels good. I'll post another update if anything changes, but for now, I'm moving on with my life. Thanks again to everyone who gave advice. It really helped me see things clearly. Update 2. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and things have gotten even more complicated. I thought I had closed the door on this situation, but apparently my family isn't ready to let go. Since blocking my parents, I started getting messages from extended family, some aunts, uncles, and cousins, telling me I was cold and heartless for abandoning my brother when he needed me the most. A few even said that I've forgotten where I came from now that I found success. It's frustrating, especially since none of these people offered to step up and help him themselves. At first, I ignored their messages and hoped they'd drop it, but the guilt started creeping in again, and I found myself wondering if I was being too harsh. I kept thinking, what if his situation is worse than I realized? So I unblocked my parents to try and get some clarity. As soon as I reached out, I found out just how deep my brother's mess really was. Turns out he owes over $90,000 in debt, mostly from gambling and some shady personal loans. When I heard the amount, I was floored. This wasn't just a small mistake or a string of bad luck. This was a disaster he had knowingly created. And the worst part? That money I gave him on my 18th birthday, the one my parents guilted me into giving him, was never used for rent. Instead, he blew it on gambling in a failed attempt to start some half-baked business. Learning that just made me angrier. All this time, I believed that the loan was at least helping him stay afloat. But no, he gambled it away, and now he's buried himself even deeper. My parents tried to downplay it, of course. They kept saying everyone makes mistakes, and family should stick together. But I wasn't having it. I reminded them that they could just give him the money they promised to give me. Double the original loan, remember? That would help him pay down some of his debt. That's when even more truth came out. They admitted they never had the money to begin with. It was just a ploy to get me to step in, either with my own cash or my business connections. What they really wanted was for me to find him a high-paying job in my network so he could slowly work off his debt. I was furious. Not only had they lied to me, but they were also trying to shift the responsibility of fixing his mess onto me once again. Of course, I refused to help, and they didn't take it well. They said I was being selfish and that I needed to remember the importance of family. After I shut them down, they started contacting other relatives and twisted the story to make it seem like I was turning my back on them. I got bombarded with messages from cousins saying things like, "You're successful now, it wouldn't hurt you to help out," and "He's your brother, aren't you ashamed to abandon him like this?" It was exhausting. At that point, I realized I had to set some serious boundaries, not just with my parents, but with the rest of the family too. I responded to the relatives who reached out and told them that if they were so concerned about my brother, they could step up and help him out. None of them had anything to say after that. They just quietly stopped messaging me, which only proved to me that they weren't really interested in helping. They just wanted to guilt me into doing it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I kept replaying everything in my head, from how they forced me to give up the money on my 18th birthday to how they demanded rent from me the very next day. It hit me that the only reason they wanted me to pay rent was to probably give my brother even more money. They were just using me as another source of cash for my brother's lifestyle. I wish things could have been different with my parents and brother, but I've accepted that some relationships just can't be fixed. If they ever truly want to reconnect with me, it'll have to come from a place of respect and not manipulation. But for now, I'm done. I'm not going to let guilt or family pressure pull me back into a toxic situation. Thanks again to everyone who commented and shared advice. Your support has really helped me stay strong throughout this mess. I'll post another update if anything major happens, but for now, I'm moving forward and not looking back. Update 3. It's been a good while since my last update, and things have somehow gone from bad to worse. I thought I had reached the end of this mess after blocking my parents and brother again, but it turns out they weren't done dragging me into their chaos. This time, they've decided to escalate things in the most ridiculous way imaginable. They're now threatening to take legal action against me. Yep, you read that right. My parents are now threatening to sue me for ruining the family. To give you some context, I recently found out that my brother's financial situation has become even more of a disaster. Honestly, I didn't even think it was possible, considering how much my parents have been begging me to help him out. Apparently, he's deep in debt with loan sharks now. It's worse than just credit card debt or a few overdue bills. From what I've pieced together through some mutual contacts, these aren't the kind of people who just send friendly reminders for payment. He owes them tens of thousands of dollars, and they're pressuring him hard. My parents, of course, are panicking, but instead of holding my brother accountable, they've decided that this is somehow my fault. My dad got another number, and they began texting me through that. They've sent me multiple messages, all of which were ridiculous, but they essentially kept saying the same things about me, turning my back on my family. I didn't respond to them, so they've now resorted to sending me legal threats. Their texts say that they're considering suing me for emotional damages because I've broken the family bond and caused them immense stress. At first, I thought they were just bluffing. It sounded so absurd. Like, what judge is going to look at this situation and say, "Yes, your adult daughter who refused to cover your gambling son's debt is clearly responsible." But as the messages kept coming, they started making me feel uneasy. What if they really tried to drag me to court just to make my life harder? I decided it was time to consult with a lawyer because I just wanted to cover my bases. Thankfully, the lawyer reassured me that I had absolutely nothing to worry about. They explained that my parents and brother have no legal basis to sue me. I'm not financially responsible for my brother's poor choices, and emotional damages in cases like this are rarely taken seriously, especially since I've had no direct involvement with his debt. The lawyer also told me it was smart to block them earlier. They also suggested that I block them again and block all other numbers or accounts that they try to contact me through so there would be no way for them to harass me anymore. They also told me to keep a record of everything my parents and my brother said over text or call so that I could treat it as evidence of harassment. Knowing that I was legally in the clear was a huge relief. Still, the entire situation made me feel sick. It's hard to describe how exhausting this has been. It's like no matter how many boundaries I set, my parents keep finding new ways to try and drag me back into their mess. And the entitlement is just mind-blowing. They actually think it's reasonable to blame me, someone they've mistreated for years, for the fact that my brother gambled his life away. It's like they can't even comprehend the idea that he is responsible for his own actions. What hurts the most is that instead of trying to make things right, my parents have doubled down on manipulation and threats. They could have taken responsibility or even asked my brother to figure things out on his own. But no. In their eyes, it's easier to blame me than face reality. I feel angry, frustrated, and honestly just drained. I keep asking myself how things got to this point, but deep down, I know that no amount of self-reflection will change who they are. This is who they've always been. People who expect me to fix everything without giving anything in return. And that's a reality I just have to accept. I don't know if there will be another update. Honestly, I hope this is the end of it. But if anything major happens, I'll be sure to let you all know. For now, I'm closing this chapter and moving forward. Update 4. It's been about a month since my last update, and things have taken another turn, as expected. Just when I thought I'd heard the worst of it, I got some news from a mutual friend that my brother has now landed himself in legal trouble. This time, it's serious. He's being investigated for fraud. Apparently, in addition to all the debt he racked up with loan sharks and his failed gambling ventures, he got involved in something shady to try to dig himself out of the hole. From what I've heard, it's linked to some sort of fraudulent scheme he participated in because he probably thought it was a quick way to make money. Now the police are involved, and he's being investigated for fraud. If he's convicted, there's a real chance he could be facing jail time. It's crazy how things have spiraled this far. I always knew he was irresponsible, but I never imagined it would escalate to the point where he's committing crimes. Unfortunately, it gets worse, and this time, it's for my parents. They are now facing eviction because of him. From what I've been told, they took out loans and refinanced their home multiple times over the years to help him, which is probably so they could help cover his debts and bail him out of trouble. Now, they're so deep in debt themselves that they're about to lose the house. Even though I had blocked them on all platforms, they managed to get a message to me through a relative. It was more of the same. A last-ditch effort to get me to step in and help. They didn't ask for money directly this time as well. Instead, they wanted me to use my resources and connections to find them a place to stay or help them fight the eviction. I hate that it's come to this for them. No matter what they've done to me, they're still my parents, and I don't wish homelessness on anyone. That being said, I can't get involved. I warned them over and over again that they were enabling my brother's behavior, but they refused to listen. They chose to sacrifice everything for him, even when they could have taken a step back and made him deal with his own mess. Now they're dealing with the consequences of that decision, and as harsh as it sounds, it's not my responsibility to fix it. The fact that they're still trying to pull me into this, even after all the boundaries I've set, just proves that nothing has changed. They haven't learned, and they likely never will. My brother has always been their priority, and they continue to expect me to clean up after him, no matter how far he's fallen. I still feel some sadness for them, of course. It's hard to completely turn off those emotions. I mean, who wouldn't feel sad to hear their parents are about to lose their home? But at the same time, I know that helping them now would only drag me back into the same toxic cycle. They'd continue to rely on me to solve all their problems while never holding my brother accountable for anything. That's not a burden I'm willing to carry, no matter how much they try to guilt me. The hardest part of this whole situation has been sticking to my decision to stay out of it. There's always that small voice in the back of my mind that wonders if I'm being too cold or too harsh. But then I remind myself that I've done everything I could for them in the past, and none of it ever made a difference. They've made their choices, and I've made mine. At this point, I've also cut off contact with the relative who passed along the message. I know they meant well, but I don't need anyone trying to play the middleman and guilt me into caving. I've set my boundaries, and I'm sticking to them. For anyone wondering, I've done a bit of digging, and it turns out the fraud investigation against my brother is quite serious. The police have been building a case for months now, and it doesn't look good for him. Whether or not he'll face jail time will only become clear later, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's where this all leads. It's hard to feel sorry for him at this point, especially because he's had countless chances to turn things around, and he wasted all of them. I'm just going to continue to focus on protecting my mental health and my boundaries. This whole experience has been exhausting, and I think I'm long overdue for a break. Thanks again to everyone who's been supportive throughout this entire ordeal. This will likely be my final update, as I've decided to fully cut ties with everyone involved. I'm moving forward, and I'm at peace with my decision. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My girlfriend dumped me twice, the second time for another guy. Now she regrets it, but I won't take her back. Original post, January 27th, 2025. I, 34M, am struggling with whether I'm in the wrong for refusing to talk to my ex, Sarah, 29F, not her real name. There's a lot of history here, and I'll do my best to explain everything clearly. In mid-2022, I met Sarah at work, and we hit it off immediately. I fell for her quickly, and it didn't take long before we started dating. However, early in our relationship, Sarah broke up with me over something minor. To make matters worse, she made a scene in front of everyone at work. I was devastated but didn't want to leave my job at first. Eventually, I realized I still had feelings for her, and seeing her every day became too painful. That's when I decided to quit and find a new job. We lived close to each other, so we bumped into each other frequently over the next few months. We started talking again, but even though I still had feelings for her, I couldn't bring myself to consider getting back together. What she had done hurt me deeply. After a couple of months, she told me she regretted breaking up with me over something so minor. She admitted that doing it in front of everyone was wrong and that she had been thinking about it ever since. She seemed genuinely remorseful, and I could see she meant it. Feeling that her apology was sincere, I asked if she wanted to give our relationship another try. She agreed, and by early 2023, we were officially back together. 1 year later, things were going great. We talked about marriage and building a future together, which made me feel ready to take the next step. I decided to surprise her with a proposal and started working extra hours to save for a house so we could marry not long after. I didn't tell her why I was working so much because I wanted it to be a complete surprise. Then, out of nowhere, she asked for a break. I was blindsided, and when I asked why, she refused to explain. Around the same time, I noticed she had been talking non-stop about a new guy at her workplace. But suddenly she stopped mentioning him altogether, which made me suspicious. Confused and hurt, I reached out to one of my close friends, Emily, not her real name, who along with her boyfriend still worked at the same place as Sarah. I vented to Emily about what was going on and asked if she knew anything. She said she didn't because she worked in a different department, but she promised to ask around. A few days later, Emily got back to me. She told me that Sarah had been feeling like I was distant lately, especially with me working extra hours and not going out much. Emily said some of Sarah's colleagues had been encouraging her to take a break, claiming I wasn't treating her well and wasn't as invested in the relationship. On top of that, they were trying to match her up with the new guy at work, saying they'd make a better pair. I told Emily about my plans to propose and buy a house for Sarah and me. That was the reason I'd been working so much. I wanted to surprise her with something big. After about 2 weeks, Sarah called me and asked to meet up. I agreed but told her up front that I needed an explanation for why she wanted a break before we could discuss anything else. She brought up how distant I had seemed, saying it made her feel like I wasn't as invested in the relationship anymore. I told her that if she had just talked to me about it, she would have known there was a reason for my behavior, but now it didn't matter anymore. Then she mentioned the new guy at her workplace. I said his name before she could, and she looked surprised, asking how I knew. I told her I wasn't an idiot. I'd noticed how she suddenly stopped talking about him after bringing him up all the time. She swore that she had never cheated on me. I replied that looking for someone better at the first sign of trouble could be considered cheating by some. At that point, I told her I didn't want to hear whatever else she had to say. Whether or not she wanted to get back together didn't matter. I was breaking up with her regardless. The breakup deeply hurt me. I couldn't bear staying in the same place, so I asked my company for a transfer and used the money I'd saved for the proposal to start over in a new city. While talking to Emily, the friend I had vented to before, she apologized to me. She admitted that she had slipped up and told Sarah about my plans to propose and buy a house. Emily said Sarah broke down crying after hearing that. I appreciated Emily's honesty, but it didn't change what had happened. By mid-December last year, I returned to my hometown to spend Christmas and New Year's with my family. Some friends wanted to organize a party to get everyone together since many of us, myself included, had moved away and were only visiting for the holidays. Sarah was invited too. We barely interacted that night, just a quick hi in passing. At one point, I glanced at her and saw her smiling while chatting with a group of women. That smile brought back so many memories. I realized that seeing her smile still made me feel the same way I did the first time I saw it. I thought to myself, how screwed up am I that I still feel this way? Despite those lingering feelings, I was still sad and deeply hurt by how things had ended. Looking back, I also started to blame myself. I should have paid more attention to how she was feeling. I could have told her about the extra work and why I was doing it. Maybe things would have turned out differently. Later that evening, one of my friends mentioned that Sarah's relationship with the guy from her work had only lasted a couple of months. After the holidays, I planned to return to the city where I now lived. My vacation ended on January 6th, so I decided to leave on Friday. That way, I'd have Saturday to sort everything out at home and prepare for the week ahead, with Sunday to relax before going back to work. Before I left, one of my friends from back home called me. He said he had a favor to ask on behalf of someone else and warned me that I wouldn't like it. I could already feel my stomach sinking. Then he told me it was Sarah. She was moving to the same city where I lived to work at her relative's company, and she needed a ride. He asked if I could take her. I didn't even think about it before I said no. The idea of being stuck in a car with her for hours was too much to bear. It would have been painfully awkward, just like the party, and I wasn't ready to put myself through that. He told me that Sarah and I needed to talk, but I wasn't having any of it. I went back home, and last week, I went for a run and stopped to rest a little in a park when I heard a familiar voice say, "Hi." It was Sarah. She tried to start a conversation by asking how I was and mentioning that we didn't get a chance to talk at the party. But I cut her off, saying I didn't want to talk to her. She told me not to be like that we needed to have a conversation. But I said no. She asked how I could still resent her after almost a year and after everything we'd been through. But I told her it wasn't resentment. I was very honest. I told her that thinking about her, talking about her, or even seeing her still hurts a lot. And that's why I couldn't talk to her. She said that was exactly why we needed to talk. I didn't see the point. I just walked away. Since then, Sarah's tried to approach me twice more, and I've shut her down both times. Some of my friends think I'm being too harsh and that I should talk to her for closure. Others say it's not okay to torture her over what happened forever. But that's not what this is about. I don't have any resentment or negative feelings toward her anymore. I even recognize now that I should share some of the blame, but it still hurts. I can't talk to her because it's like reopening an old wound that never fully healed. So, am I the asshole for refusing to talk to her? TLDR. My ex Sarah broke off our relationship almost a year ago, and I've since moved on as best I can. Recently, she's been trying to talk to me, but I told her I can't because it still hurts too much. Some friends think I'm being too harsh, but I don't resent her. I just don't want to reopen old wounds. Am I the asshole for refusing to talk to her? Additional information from OP after reading comments. OP, thank you all for your advice. I just want to explain better one thing. My friends are not calling me or messaging me saying that I should talk to her. That's just the opinion of some of them when the subject was brought up. AITA has no consensus spot. OP was an irrelevant comment. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I don't think you're an AH, but I do think you resent her more than you are willing to admit and haven't actually worked through it internally yet. OP, you might be right. Sometimes I think I'm totally over it, but then I realize it still haunts me. Comment 2. Some people might say you need closure, but it seems like you've already processed a lot of the situation, and talking to her could just bring up more pain. You don't owe her anything, especially when it's affecting your well-being. You've already made it clear how you feel, and you're setting boundaries, which is important for healing. OP, that's what I think, but I don't know. Sometimes I'm not sure. Comment 3. Moving to your city, wanting a ride there where you're trapped in the car with her for hours, ignoring your rejections and being persistent. Those are not the actions of someone who wants closure to move on. That's someone trying to wiggle their way back into your good graces. OP, good point. Comment 4. Once was a mistake, twice was a lesson. A third time is you being stupid. That's like watching the same movie but expecting a different ending. Don't do it to yourself. T. There won't be a third time. I was already sure about not going back to her. And your comments are helping me make up my mind about not talking to her. Update. February 2nd, 2025. 6 days later. Hey everyone. I wanted to give an update and thank you all for your input. I took the time to read through every comment, and while I didn't respond to all of them, it was only because I didn't have anything to add. I'm truly grateful for everyone who shared their thoughts. It has been incredibly helpful. After reading everything and thinking it through, I've decided to stick to my decision not to talk to Sarah. Something I forgot to mention in my original post, though I did tell a few commenters, is that I blocked her everywhere after we broke up the second time. Over the last few days, it seems like her persistence has started to backfire. Some of our mutual friends, including the ones who initially told me I should talk to her, have become frustrated with her constant attempts to contact me. Apparently, they've started turning on her because of it. 3 days ago, Emily, the friend I vented to back then, made a post on social media about stalkers. She didn't name Sarah, but a lot of people picked up on what she meant. I've also seen several comments on my original post suggesting that Sarah might have been stalking me. Her job in the same city and her coincidental appearance at the park all line up with that theory. For what it's worth, I know her uncle owns a company here, so maybe that is really why she moved, but honestly, it's not my problem and I'm not going to look into it. Things have been quieter. Friends have dropped the subject, and Sarah hasn't tried to reach out again. That is, until yesterday. I was watching the UFC event with some coworkers. When it ended, I was heading to my car when my phone rang. It was one of our mutual friends calling. She said she had been talking to Sarah and asked if she could pass along a message. I sighed but told her to make it quick. The message was simple. Sarah said she understands why I don't want to talk to her. She promised she wouldn't try to reach out again, but added that she still thinks we need to talk. She said the door is open if I ever want to. I told my friend I didn't have a message to pass back and asked her not to bring up Sarah again in our conversations. If what Sarah said is true, it's a relief, but I'm not holding my breath. I wouldn't be surprised if she tries something else. Maybe she thinks giving me space will make me go to her, but it won't. That chapter of my life is closed. Right now, I just want to focus on myself. I probably won't be dating anyone anytime soon. If there is one thing I've learned, it's that I need to get to know people better before jumping into a relationship. I've also been thinking about how loosely I use the word friend. That is another part of my life I need to rethink. Some of the people I have called friends have proven they don't have my best interests at heart. A few people suggested therapy in the comments, and I'll admit it is something I've been considering. For now, I'm giving myself time to heal on my own, but if I still don't feel right after a while, I will look into it. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to comment. Your advice has been a huge help in sorting all this out. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Good for you for sticking to your boundaries. It sounds like you're taking positive steps for yourself. P.S. Just moving forward instead of thinking about the past. Comment 2. It sounds like you are doing well and moving on. Keep focusing on yourself and enjoying what you have. If you feel you need counseling, do it when you are ready. Good luck. OP. I think now people around me understand my situation and what I truly need. That will help a lot. Comment 3. This is exactly why monkey branching is a terrible dating practice. It's cheating with extra steps. That's why she keeps pushing. She knows what she did, just like she knows what she lost. Yet ironically, she's too naive to understand that even if you all got back together, you don't look at her the same. That's totally understandable. P, you're right. It would not be the same. Comment 4. Good for you for holding to your boundaries. The moment she wasn't getting the amount of attention she wanted, she sought out a coworker to monkey branch to. It was cheating. She wasn't remorseful as she began a relationship with that guy. All she wants now is to act like she didn't cheat on you and rekindle your relationship. She's already proven that she will cheat with whoever shows her attention. That's not someone to be in a relationship with. Have you not dated since the breakup? Personally, That helped me get over my ex-wife who cheated. It's been a year. There's someone special out there for you. Not every woman is like your ex. Good luck. OP. I've dated other women since the breakup, just nothing serious. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My parents gave me up for adoption because I was a boy. Now, they've contacted me requesting money to support my sister's education. I am a 25-year-old male. My narrative began when I was 6 years old, or rather, from the moment I was born. I am my parents' third and youngest kid. We weren't rich, but my parents made enough money to support 3 children. We resided in a tiny town in an ancestral home, which helped us conserve money. My grandparents owned a farm, which supplied a substantial percentage of our food. Dad worked as a truck driver and returned home every 3 to 4 days, while Mom was a waitress. Before I was born, my parents had 2 daughters. You can imagine how I felt as the unplanned child. Of course, as a child, I had no idea what was going on, but as I grew older, I started to figure it out. Learning that I was unwanted was a difficult lesson. My parents wanted to get rid of me, but the doctor cautioned them against it owing to potential health dangers to my mother. My mother was really interested in having a daughter. Her explanation was simple. She wanted me to avoid buying new clothes by reusing my sisters. My 2 sisters were close in age, so they could readily share clothing. They actually enjoyed it. However, when I was born a boy, my parents were extremely disappointed. They despised me for it. They dressed me in my sister's old clothes and even sent me to school wearing their abandoned uniforms. It was quite embarrassing. Although I was very young, I have vague memories of being teased for wearing a girl's uniform and having long hair. Any concerns I made were answered with a violent thrashing from my mother. I grew up in an environment filled with abuse and harsh words, much of which I didn't understand at the time. As I grew older and realized what they meant, I came to despise my parents. My father was marginally better than my mother, but because he was away most of the time, his treatment of me varied. Some days he appeared impartial toward all 3 of us, but on others, he was as harsh, if not crueler, than my mother. I won't say I was a perfect child. As I grew older and became more aware of their fondness for my sisters, I began to rebel. They always got the finest of everything, while I only got leftovers. In response, I began to behave out because I blamed them for my troubles. I was frequently grounded, sometimes harshly. There were several times when I had to prepare my own breakfast and was without dinner. Consider the pain of a 6-year-old going through that. One particular episode stands out in my recollection, and I believe it constituted a watershed moment in my life. I had been brutally bullied on the playground for masquerading as a girl. When I returned home, I learned that my mother had purchased new clothes for my sisters for the holidays. In a flash of wrath, I took a pair of scissors and turned their new garments into confetti. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm not proud of it, but my actions sprung from grief, not malice. Instead of attempting to comprehend my anguish, my parents considered my actions as an unforgivable sin that demanded the worst punishment. They decided to place me up for adoption. They waited for a month, and no one wanted to adopt me. This rejection inflamed their rage even further. I was continually reminded of how useless I was and how no one wanted me. Some of the harshest comments I heard came from my mother, who said, "I wish I had done a gender check. I would never have brought him into the world. It haunts me that my parents despise me so much for reasons beyond my control." After some time, when there was no response to my adoption, my parents began discussing it with their friends and family. Dad knew someone in the next town who had a food truck with his wife. They were poorer than us, yet desired a child. They were in their late 30s and had been trying for over a decade without luck. Dad spoke with them and they easily consented to adopt me. I recall Dad breaking the news to Mom and my sisters, and they were overjoyed to be rid of me. Dad also cautioned them that the couple was impoverished and I might not be able to attend school. Mom shrugged her eyes and replied, "Who cares? Just drop him off tomorrow." I stood in the corner holding the curtain. Even though I despised my family, the prospect of abandoning them terrified and pained me. My eyes welled up with tears, but I refrained from crying aloud. They were so delighted, reveling in the moment, that they didn't know I was present. When Dad realized I was crying, he walked over, massaged my back and said, "Pack your belongings. We'll leave tomorrow morning for your new family." That was the moment I couldn't hold back. I cried out, but it went unheard. I went back to my room, packed my belongings, and prayed that my new family would be less evil. The following day, Dad drove me to the next town. I don't remember how I felt during the drive. I wasn't crying. Perhaps I was simply numb. My new family's home was small, with only one room, and they had transformed the warehouse into my bedroom. I had no complaints. At least they had made an effort to provide me with my own area, which I had never had before. At my previous home, I slept on a cot in the corner of my sister's room, with only a little closet for my possessions. Even though the new room was smaller, it was comfortable. My new parents, Mary and John, were warm and caring, but I came from a dysfunctional home and had never known love. My parents had shown affection to my sisters, but never to me. I questioned Mary and John's intentions and felt their kindness was fleeting. I tried not to become attached to them for fear that they would forsake me as well. Childhood trauma. It took me several months to discover that their love was genuine and not an act. Yes, my schoolwork was disrupted that year since my parents relocated me midterm, but Mary and John agreed to enroll me the following year. When I witnessed how hard they worked to save for my education, I fell in love with them. My adoption proved to be a blessing in disguise. My biological parents never returned after leaving me with Mary and John. Honestly, I was relieved. Here, I was treated like a boy, with no shame or criticism. Mary and John worked extremely hard, operating their food truck for 14 to 16 hours per day. Their truck was parked right outside their apartment, so I was never alone. I could see them from my bedroom window, and I ultimately began spending my days at the truck, assisting where I could. When I eventually started school, I concentrated on my studies while also assisting with chores whenever I had free time. When I was a little over 10 years old, I was assisting John at the cash register, and I turned out to be fairly brilliant at math. I learned about business and accounting at a young age. After high school, I wanted to run their food truck full-time, but Mary and John demanded that I finish college first. Despite their advancing age and frailty, they used their savings to pay for my schooling. I wanted to take over the company to reciprocate their generosity, but they convinced me that they could make it for a few more years and encouraged me to complete my college education. I enrolled in college to study business and accounting, hoping to make them proud. After a while, when there was no response to my adoption, they began discussing it with their friends and relatives. Dad knew someone in the next town who had a food van with his wife. They were poorer than us, yet desired a child. They were in their late 30s and had been trying for a child for almost a decade, but there had been no success. Dad spoke with them and they easily consented to adopt me. I remember Dad breaking the news to Mom and my sisters. They were overjoyed to get free of me. Dad also explained that they were poor and that I might never be able to attend school. Mom shrugged her eyes and replied, "Who cares? Just drop him off tomorrow." I stood paralyzed in the corner, clutching the curtain. Regardless of how much I despised my family, I was terrified and hurt to leave them. I had tears in my eyes but did not cry out. They were so thrilled and enjoying the occasion they forgot I was there. When Dad saw me in tears, he walked forward, patted my back, and told me to pack my belongings. "We'll leave tomorrow morning to join your new family." When he said this, I cried out loudly, but I realized it was not heard. So I went to my room, packed my belongings, and prayed that my new family was less evil. The following day, Dad drove me to the next town. I don't remember exactly what emotions I was experiencing, but I wasn't crying. Perhaps I was simply numb as I left the house and throughout the drive. My new family was definitely poor. They lived in a little house with only one room. They'd converted the warehouse into my room. I had no problems because they at least tried to offer me a room. I've never had my own room or bed. My sisters had a bed, and I was put up on a cot in the corner of their room with my stuff stored in a small closet. This room was smaller than ours, yet it was comfortable. My new parents, Mary and John, were loving and caring, but I came from a troubled home. I had never felt that love before. Yes, I witnessed my parents' affection for my sisters, but never for me. I used to question my new parents' intentions and assumed their love was only transitory. I tried not to become attached to them for fear of being abandoned as well. You are aware of childhood trauma. It took me several months to discover that they truly loved me and were not putting on a front. Yes, my school was discontinued that year since my parents relocated me in the middle of the school year, but my new parents promised to enroll me the next year. I saw how they went above and beyond to save money so that I could attend school. That's when I started to love them back. My adoption proved to be a blessing in disguise. My original parents never showed up after sending me to Mary and John. To be honest, I was relieved because I was treated as if I were still a boy. Mary and John were extremely hardworking people. They worked 14 to 16 hours a day on their food truck. The vehicle was located right outside of their apartment, so I was not left alone when they were working. I could see them directly through my bedroom window. Eventually, I began spending my days on the truck, assisting them with everything I could. When I was admitted to the school, I dedicated all of my time to my studies while also assisting them with chores when I had time. I was a little older than 10 when I assisted John at the cash desk. I was pretty adept at calculating. I learned business and accounting from a young age. After high school, I wanted to run their business full-time, but they both insisted that I finish college first. They used their funds to fund it. They were becoming too old and frail to operate a food truck. I wanted to assume their responsibilities the same way they took mine, but they told me that they could handle it for a few more years and that I should go to college. I studied business and accounting in college because I aspired to be an entrepreneur. My graduation day was the best day of my life. John and Mary were over the moon. They even asked my biological parents to attend the convocation, but they did not show up. After college, I hoped to manage the food van while Mary and John retired, but they had other ideas for me. They had acquired substantial savings and turned them up to me. This act overwhelmed me. John stated they could survive on their own for a few more years, but he didn't want to involve me in their business. He provided me with the money to start my own business. I didn't want to waste their hard-earned money, so I used my business skills wisely. I looked for a tiny local restaurant in a good neighborhood that was struggling with sales. After several rejections, I ultimately persuaded the owner to lease the property to me on a profit-sharing basis. I started from scratch, refurbishing the facility and creating a menu tailored to the likes of millennials and Generation Z. I focused on providing the greatest service to my consumers. Sales increased dramatically within a year, and I doubled my initial investment. For years later, I own 3 cafes in town, all of which are successful. I moved Mary and John into a better apartment and obtained a little room for myself as I'd been living with them up until then. I asked them to retire and get rid of their food truck, but they insisted on keeping it for their own satisfaction. When I left their house with my bag all those years ago, I had no idea I would one day graduate from college. But here I am, running a restaurant chain in town. Fast forward to last month. It was a regular day at work. I was working at the cash register of one of my eateries when I noticed a familiar face. It seemed like I'd seen a ghost. It was my biological father. I saw him after almost 2 decades. He appeared pale and sickly. He stepped across the counter with a big smile and hugged me. I didn't say anything because the restaurant was crowded and instead escorted him to a corner. Seeing his face brought back all the traumatic memories from my youth. I couldn't have written about my past in such depth if he hadn't reappeared in my life. He expressed his pride in my accomplishment and happiness. I stood there stunned, unable to answer. He stated that he had been traveling by and saw John, who informed him of my success. He stated that he will bring my mother to meet me over the weekend. I remained silent, and he left shortly after. That evening, I told John that I did not want to meet my biological parents, who abandoned me because I was a boy. John and Mary were aware of my rough childhood. I wanted to flee and hide for the weekend, but Mary persuaded me to forgive them and go forward. I finally agreed to meet them on the condition that John and Mary accompany me. My original parents came to John's house, and I expected them to apologize for what they did to me. But to my surprise, they showed no sorrow. Instead, they detailed the favors they had performed for me. My mother told me that I should be grateful to them for finding me wonderful parents like John and Mary, who raised me to be successful. I was stunned. I wanted to lash out at them, but Mary took my hand and told me to remain calm. I politely replied, "I am grateful to have John and Mary as parents." The entire encounter seemed awkward and uncomfortable for me. The next day, I got a call from my biological mother. I didn't recognize her voice. It was the first time she'd contacted me in 20 years. She was not phoning to reconcile. She asked for money. She stated that my father had lost his regular job and had been working on a contract basis for several years. She also lost her job since no restaurant wanted to hire a 50-year-old waitress. They were hurting financially. I inquired how much she needed. She replied, $20,000 would be sufficient. She had borrowed the money from her friends over the previous 3 months to buy groceries and run the property. Her pals now wanted the money back, but she didn't have it. I hung up the phone, stating I'd think about it and get back. The truth is, no matter how much I despise them, I feel horrible that people are pursuing them for money. Sometimes I think she's simply taking advantage of me, but what if they really need help? I'd feel horrible letting them go through embarrassment, especially considering I have the money. Update 1. Thank you for all of your remarks and congratulations. People have different feelings about helping my mother with $20,000. I discussed it with Mary and John. Mary was pleased that I was considering assisting my parents, but she also advised me to be cautious. John stated that it was my money, thus the decision was mine, but he shared the same concern. What if they were attempting to manipulate my emotions? After much deliberation, I chose to seize my first and only shot with my biological parents. I transferred the money to her account. It felt nice at first to aid my family despite the fact that they had mistreated me, but as I suspected, they began to exploit me financially. So, I quickly recognized I had been correct in my caution. My mother called me back a week after I had sent the money. I responded with conflicting sentiments. She thanked me for my assistance and then stated, "Your sisters want to see you. When do you think you can make it?" For a time, I believed they truly wanted me back in their life. Regardless of all my parents did to me, I never despised my sisters. As a child, I may have been nasty to them, but I never blamed them for what happened. It was not their fault. I often wondered if my parents abandoned me because they were poor, not because they were nasty. I informed Mom that we could meet on Sunday and I would drive home, but she objected and said, "Why don't we meet somewhere outside?" I didn't think much of it at the moment but agreed. She agreed to text me the place and time. However, after the call I felt nervous. Why didn't they want me to come to their home? Yes, it doesn't matter where we meet, but after so many years, wouldn't you rather meet your family at home than in a restaurant? Later, she emailed me information on an expensive restaurant. I didn't think about it at the time since I was still upset that they hadn't asked me home. When I got to the restaurant, they were already present. My sisters ran to hug me, and for a minute, I was overjoyed to see them after so many years. We were having fun catching up until the menu arrived. They began ordering the most expensive dishes on the menu. When they inquired what he wanted, my father smiled and replied, "Order the most costly one. My son is a big man now." That was a very petty thing to say. If John or Mary had said that, I would have been proud, but hearing it from my biological parents felt cruel and manipulative. There was little I could do. I sat there watching them enjoy themselves, knowing full well that they were draining my money. Yes, I did pay the bill too. I had wild thoughts about ghosting them before the bill arrived, but that would have been too cruel, right? Right then and there, I told myself I would never fall into their emotional trap again. I stayed cold for the remainder of the evening, and I doubt anyone noticed. When we were leaving, they did not invite me home. Instead, my older sister inquired, "So, where are we dining next?" I faked a smile and responded, "Nowhere," before waving them goodbye. When I returned, I told Mary about my greedy relatives. She was shocked. Mary, a gentle and independent woman, found their behavior troubling. She encouraged me not to act foolishly again and to concentrate on my life rather than worrying about others. I took her advice to heart. A week later, my sisters called, but I did not answer. My mother called, but I also ignored her. It has been 2 months since then, and they have stopped contacting me. I believe they finally received the message that I do not want them in my life. Update 2. Hello, everyone. Thank you for all the love. As I indicated in my last essay, I stopped responding to my sisters and biological parents after realizing they only wanted me for my money. My mother called me again recently, after nearly 5 months. I noticed the phone ring and answered it on impulse. She began with a small conversation, asking about me and my career, but it sounded artificial and pretentious. I couldn't stand it any longer and inquired, "What do you want?" She took a big breath and explained, "Your sisters had to drop out of college because Dad couldn't afford their tuition. They asked me to sponsor their college education." I flipped out. My mother urged me to calm down, saying, "They are your sisters, your family, and you should help them." I was at work at the time and did not want to disrupt my day, so I hung up. She called me back that evening. I had ignored her calls a few times, but it bothered me. I recognized that ignoring her was not the solution. When she called again, I answered. She responded, "Your sisters are really pleased to return to their college. So, how are we going to handle this? Will you pay all at once or by semester? I advise you to transfer the entire sum to me, and I will handle the tuition payments each semester. That way, you won't have to worry about anything." I was stunned. I replied, "Whoa, hold on. I am not going to make any payments." She sounded genuinely astonished, as if she had not expected no to be an option. She asked, "What do you mean you won't pay everything at once?" "That's great. We can also pay in installments." I reiterated, "I'm not paying anyway. My sister's schooling is not my obligation, especially since my parents abandoned me and never followed up with me. Now, you're only talking to me because you want to take my money." She erupted with rage and lost control. "Do not forget that we gave birth to you. We are responsible for your current state. Your father secured a suitable guardian for you, and now that it is time to repay us, you must accept your obligation. Your sisters and parents are your responsibility, and you must take care of them all." I had a lot to say, but I knew it would be lost on deaf, egocentric ears. So, I calmly responded, "Yes, I owe a lot to my parents, John and Mary. They deserve all credit for my success. As for you, I am not sure who you are. None of my documents bear your names, nor do I have any images of you. So, I do not think I know you at all." She began throwing insults at me, but I simply said, "Wrong number, lady," and disconnected the call. Call me selfish, harsh, or whatever you want, but I am not going to spend my hard-earned money on my so-called family. They were never my family. They abandoned me when I was only 6 years old. And yes, I did see some comments on my last post on why I call John and Mary by their names rather than Mom and Dad. Actually, I call them Mom and Dad now. It didn't happen right away when I moved home with them, but as time went, and they worked hard to provide for me, love me, and get me into school, I grew devoted to them. For the sake of clarity in this narrative, I referred to them as John and Mary, but to me, they are my true mother and father. I don't call my biological parents anything because they don't exist to me. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Family betrayed me in court for my son's custody. Now they beg for help after my ex turned on them. I secretly recorded their confession. Hello. This is going to be a little long because I need to include a lot of context for it to make sense. I, 33F, got divorced a few months ago, but it had been planned for over a year. I met my ex-husband, James, through friends when I was 25. After 2 years of dating, we decided to live together and marry. His family was quite conservative and traditional, and they did not approve of living in relationships, so we had to marry if we wanted to be together. I genuinely liked James, so I didn't mind marrying him. My parents supported our decision, so we married within a year of living together. I discovered that I was pregnant, and we were ecstatic. It seemed like our family was finally coming together and everything was falling into place. Unfortunately, after I revealed my pregnancy, my in-laws began pressing me to quit my career and focus on being a mother. It didn't help that my job was not very generous about maternity leave, and because I hadn't been there long, my leave would be especially brief. So, at the time, I considered the advantages and cons and decided to leave my work. I didn't make this decision alone. James and his parents were convincing me it would be the greatest decision in the long term, so I just had to do it. James appeared assured and promised to take care of the family. I didn't have to worry about money. He'd bring enough home, and my sole attention would be on raising our child. My parents and older brother both agreed it was best if I stopped my job and stayed at home, like my mother had done. She elected not to return to work because family was her top concern. With pressure from both sides of the family, I chose to quit during my second trimester. Everything appeared to be in order, and I had complete faith in my husband to not let me down, so I quit my booming career to become a stay-at-home parent. However, shortly after my kid was born, I observed something peculiar about James's behavior. Throughout the latter months of my pregnancy, I couldn't put my finger on it, but the vibe felt odd. Sure, he seemed joyful when our baby was born, and I expected things to return to normal, but unfortunately, they worsened. He got angry around me, and if I tried to speak with him, he snapped. He only seemed genuinely happy when he was playing with our son. Aside from that, it seemed like he was constantly annoyed to be at home with me. He started working longer hours and even on weekends. He made excuses not to spend time with me. I didn't understand what was wrong, but I kept trying to make our marriage work. Unlike him, I still loved him and refused to give up on us. This pattern persisted for around 2 years following my son's birth. James stayed at work longer than required, and even when he came home, he wasn't truly with me. I couldn't really complain since whenever I tried to talk to him, he said he was too exhausted from work and it was not an easy chore for him to be the sole breadwinner for the household, which was really disrespectful to me because I was perfectly capable of earning money for myself. But I had to rely on him since he promised to make things easy for me. I even asked him a few times if he would rather that I return to work so that we could split the bills and he didn't have to face all of the pressure. However, he claimed that would be an insult to him and his abilities, and that his parents would never accept it. We'd have a difficult time with them if I went back to work, so I stayed at home and raised my son, which was the only thing that made me happy because James had changed. He was no longer the man I'd married. About a year ago, I discovered that James had an affair with one of his coworkers. It was quite difficult for me to find this because I had been skeptical for quite some time. I even snooped through his phone and laptop while he was sleeping and discovered nothing. I knew all of his passwords because he had written them down in his notepad, but that didn't help. It almost seemed as if he had nothing to conceal, and I began to feel dumb for being cautious. I even searched through his possessions for a burner phone or anything odd, but I found nothing. I began to suspect that I was being overly paranoid and insecure, but as luck would have it, I witnessed his cheating firsthand. About a year ago, James and I were organizing a spectacular birthday celebration for our son. He'd invited the coworker he was fooling with. She was a single mother with a youngster around our age, so I wasn't surprised she got invited. James had informed me she was a very close friend, so I saw nothing wrong with her being there. After my son had cut his birthday cake, I went upstairs to change into more comfortable attire for the celebration. When I got into my bedroom, I saw James and his coworker making out. She was seated on his lap. Took me a few minutes to grasp what I saw. First and foremost, it was in my bedroom, which exacerbated the situation. Second, they did not even pause when they heard the door open. I had to walk up to them before they noticed I was there. I'm quite sure they felt it was great to make out in my bedroom at home just for the thrill of it, but they obviously did not anticipate me to have a complete breakdown. I'm not proud of it, but discovering that what I'd believed for so long was true sparked something inside me. I grabbed the coworker's hair and began dragging her out of the room. According to what I was later told, James is physically stronger than me, but he was unable to stop me. I can't recall much of it since I had a rage blackout. I carried her downstairs, James following behind me, and tossed her in the center of the room when everyone was still present. I don't recall much of what I said, but I supposedly called her various disparaging names and informed everyone what she and James were up to in my bedroom. I didn't care if my kid or his pals were present. Looking back, that was really uncomfortable and inappropriate, but I didn't consider it at the time. I screamed at the top of my lungs. My parents, brother, and in-laws were all present. My father eventually calmed me down and returned me to my room. Once inside, I completely broke down and sobbed uncontrollably, But rather than staying with me to console me, my father locked me in my room and returned downstairs. I should have known then that my parents did not genuinely care about me. I knew they were more concerned with appearances than reality. But this was absurd. Nobody came to check on me over the following several hours. Even after I calmed down, I had no idea what was happening outside. I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't reach anyone. It wasn't until after midnight that my brother unlocked the door and allowed me out. He didn't even inquire how I was. They probably would have kept me in the room longer if I hadn't started banging on the door like a crazy lady. When I got out, I asked my brother what had transpired since I was locked in. He informed me that practically everyone had fled following my collapse. He also told me James had departed with his parents and our children. My parents, brother, and I were the only people left in the house. My brother let me out to discuss what we should do next, but in my family, discussion means telling me what to do. They informed me that I needed to apologize to everyone for how I had behaved at the party. Not only that, but I also needed to apologize to James and his parents. Apparently, James had difficulty convincing his coworker not to file charges against me because what I did to her was technically an act of physical assault. My family told me that I owed it to James to speak things out and work on our marriage rather than making this a bigger deal. I lost it. I screamed at them to leave my house because I was not about to allow anyone stand under my roof and order me to apologize to my unfaithful spouse. I got into a heated argument with my family because they told me that I owed it to James to make things right and give the marriage another try, or they would sever ties with me. So, I told them to go ahead since I had gotten to the point where I didn't care what anyone thought of me. I was going to file for divorce and get out of this situation without anyone's approval. I phoned a lawyer the next day and filed for divorce less than a week after the occurrence. James was served shortly after, and he had the arrogance to express disappointment and disbelief. He returned home the same day he was served with the divorce papers and demanded an explanation. I told him I was not going to take him back after what he had done and how he had disrespected me. We had a nasty verbal argument in which I called him a lot of names, and he promised me that I would never see my son again. I had no idea he would actually keep his word. Then the legal struggle started. We had very few common assets, so the divorce proceedings were far smoother than the custody battle. The house belonged to me because I bought it with my own money, and there was no doubt about that. Everything else was to be auctioned with the earnings divided between us. We only had to wait the 6-month waiting time mandated by the state, after which the divorce would be finalized if a settlement was made. The only disagreement was about alimony because James forced me to quit my work and I didn't have enough money. I needed alimony to start a new life. He, however, believed that I should not receive any alimony at all. Fortunately, I had a few texts that demonstrated he had promised to support me, otherwise, I might not have received any. The divorce process was easier for me emotionally because I had already distanced mentally from James. However, it was the custody struggle that truly killed me. Unfortunately, my parents and brother stabbed me in the back for cash. My ex-husband and his lawyer were nasty and they started building a case against me, painting me as an unstable, reckless, and insane mother. They wanted to show that I was unfit to raise our son alone, so James and his parents should gain full custody. I assumed my parents and brother had been bought off by my ex-in-laws because they were wealthy, and I couldn't think of another reason for my own family to turn against me. I'm very sure my family warmed up to my in-laws from the start because of their money. James accused me of being a functioning alcoholic with serious rage issues. They made up situations in which I allegedly lost my temper and endangered my son, even though none of this had actually occurred. They needed to portray me as the villain. I expected some people to side with me, but all of my friends supported James, which I believe was owing to my breakdown at my son's birthday party. The worst betrayal, however, occurred when my parents and brother testified against me in court, stating I needed rehab and intense therapy before being permitted to see my son. They even suggested that James cheated because he was tired of coping with my unpredictable behavior. Despite a good fight with my counsel, I was unable to win custody of my son. The odds were stacked against me, and there was little I could do to prevent the inevitable. My lawyer and I worked hard to gather proof to prove I was a decent mother, but it all went to waste. The decision was revealed a few months ago, and it was the last time I saw my kid in person. I was granted supervised visiting privileges, but James never let me see him. It was pointless. My son is now 4 years old, and I'm constantly concerned that he'll forget me. According to a few relatives that remain on my side, my family continues to see my son. They routinely publish images with him, but I can't see him. James and my son live with my in-laws, and it appears that everyone but me gets to spend time with him. I cannot imagine something more heartbreaking. I've been living on memories of my son, thinking James was taking excellent care of him. I don't think I could have provided a comfortable life for him on my current pay, given I've only lately resumed working. I got a job at a friend's startup, but it doesn't pay well. Most of the employees are in their early 20s, working for experience and expecting to advance to better chances. Although I receive alimony, it is insufficient to maintain my previous lifestyle. I can't cut expenditures like a bachelor, but it's all I have right now. I had wanted to reapply for joint custody once my life was in order, but an unexpected chance presented itself. A few weeks ago, my parents contacted me after months of silence to ask for assistance. It turned out that James was not the fantastic man they thought he was. My brother sent me an email requesting that I come over to their place since they had realized something crucial and wanted to come clean. They were tired of keeping secrets from me and wanted to be a part of my life again. I tried to ignore the email, but I couldn't quit thinking about how this might help me get my son back. So I went to their place that evening. I anticipated them to be living like kings after selling me out for money from my ex-in-laws. However, they were actually living in worse conditions than previously. My son, on the other hand, was overjoyed to see me, which added to an already wonderful evening. When I visited my family that day, they practically began pleading for forgiveness as soon as I walked in the door. Apparently, they recognized how severely they had messed up and there was no turning back. Yet, they still wanted me to forgive them. After the divorce, when my ex-in-laws and James were approached about the money they had been promised, James informed my family that it was no longer occurring. Apparently, they had just been told that they would be well compensated if they turned on me and testified in their favor. However, there was no written evidence to support it. If my relatives tried to go back and inform me about everything, James and his family would make sure they never saw my son again. So, for the protection of my son, they agreed to keep their mouths hidden, even though they had not been paid as promised. But things grew worse. They were not only pushed into testifying against me, but they were also treated as free babysitters. Every day, James would drop off our boy at my parents' house and they had to watch him while giving up their own time. It was really inconvenient because both my father and brother had jobs to attend to, and my mother couldn't handle all of the housework and caring for her grandchild on her own because she was getting older. So either my father or brother would have to work from home every day, which was growing increasingly tough for them, which is why they approached me to finally put an end to it. Apparently, they wanted to make a deal with me. They told me that if I provided them the money my ex-in-laws promised, they would represent me in court and ensure that I got custody of my son. I was going to recommend it myself, but it wasn't unexpected that they did. My family had always been materialistic, and this was especially true now that my father's business had failed and they were back to working for other people. Obviously, they would want money more than ever now because my father wanted to retire but didn't have enough saved because he had invested all of his money in the firm, which eventually failed. They claimed they could make up a tale about how they were forced and coerced into testifying against me, so they wouldn't be charged with perjury while under oath. They were unaware that I no longer required their assistance. I had been recording everything they said since the moment I came inside the house since I suspected something was wrong and didn't want to take any chances. So, I had already recorded everything. Nonetheless, I encouraged my family to give me screenshots if they had any to prove they had been used and lied to, and I promised to help them. Following that, I departed. I'd already seen my son and I had more than enough evidence to seek custody again, so that's what I did the next day with my lawyer. This time, I was ready. The custody lawsuit is still ongoing, but one thing is certain. I will be able to prove that none of the accusations James made against me were accurate and that my family had been lying about everything all along. I've already listened to the recording, which has greatly influenced my decision. James and his lawyer are literally rushing for evidence while I take it all in and enjoy the show. This is what they made me go through the last time, and now I get to do it to them. It's karma at its best, and I couldn't be happier. The only thing that hasn't been ideal is that my family has said I used them just like James did, and that I had no right to record them without their permission and use it against them. However, in my state, that is perfectly legal and acceptable in court. I had no idea what they were talking about until they told me I had broken their trust by recording them. Bold statements from those who broke my confidence by siding with my ex-husband in the custody dispute. They believed that what I did was wrong because what they had done was out of necessity. They needed the money, but I didn't need to screw them over and expose them to perjury. They stated they had already committed to assist me and testify against James and his family, so I didn't need to go behind their backs. They keep contacting me and it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to ignore. So, am I a jerk for going over my family's back and putting them in danger of being charged with perjury? Update 1. Hello everyone. The custody dispute is still ongoing and James and his lawyer are working tirelessly to show that they have been speaking the truth. Of course, they might be charged, and since it is a criminal offense, they could face jail time. But it is not my business right now, and it should not have been at any time. I'm not sure why I was worried about my parents when they obviously weren't concerned about me when it was my turn. So, it's basically tit for tat right now. The comments section made me realize how entitled my parents were. Anyway, I've terminated connections with them. They can all go wherever they choose. I want my son to be okay and with me. I've waited long enough for this, and I'm not going to allow my family's victimization of themselves to stop me. If they can sell me out for money, I don't think I need to be loyal to them. I am done now. Update 2. So, the good news is that I finally got custody of my son. I don't think I've ever been this happy in my life. The second good news is that my in-laws, James, and my family have been charged with perjury, and they may face jail time. I'm sure they're regretting everything now, but I don't care since I got what I wanted. My son back, which was all I ever asked for. According to what I know, James is still attempting to fight it and avoid jail, but I don't think it will work. I've already applied for a restraining order against all of them because I've been receiving extremely frightening text messages, and I'm certain it's from these folks. Nobody else would want to hurt me unless it was them. Things have been really busy and crazy over the last several weeks, but I'm finally learning to slow down. I badly want to spend more time with my son. Therefore, I chose to shorten my working hours. I've also considered selling my property and moving to a smaller apartment to save more money. I still have a lot of work to do. Repairing my relationship with my son will not be an easy process. Even though he is glad to be with me, he continues to inquire about his father and grandparents, and I am at a loss for words. He's told me a few things about them, such as how he spent the majority of his time with his grandparents and how his father and my in-laws were only available for a portion of the day. When I ask him how it was living with his grandparents, he makes a face and says it wasn't very good since everyone was continuously fighting. I completely get that. It sounds like they treated him poorly because they refused to accept responsibility. I can't comprehend why they treat a youngster that way, but I wouldn't put it past them. They are undoubtedly capable of making even a young child feel horrible about himself. But I don't have to worry about it anymore because he's with me. Update 3. Hello everyone. I can't believe I've returned here after nearly 5 years. My life is so different right now that it feels unreal. 5 years is a long time and a lot has changed, the first being my son's age. We have a wonderful connection right now, and after many therapy sessions, he and I have finally become the mother and son we should have been from the start. He's growing into a wonderful man, and I'm confident he'll be nothing like his father. I just know it in my heart. He's 9 years old and already a wonderful gentleman. I'm parenting him on my own, and I have full custody because James gave up and moved to Europe after getting out of jail. I cannot say I am surprised. He left with his coworker who he had been cheating on me with, and they are now married. I guess he merely replaced his biological son with another child. It's terrifying, but that's the type of person he is. My parents and my brother were released from jail after 6 months of good behavior. We haven't communicated, and they didn't try to contact me when they were freed, which I appreciate because I doubt I would have had much to say to them anyway. I have no news regarding my in-laws. I haven't heard from them in years, and that's for the best, I believe. I am living a life now. God has blessed me with a solid job and a consistent salary. I'm still working at the company I started with my friend's business, and it's doing pretty well, so life worked out beautifully for me and my son, and it was more than I could have hoped for. I am very appreciative of everything. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My family and I were excluded from our longtime friend's annual trip because my son is autistic. What should I do? Original post. 5 years ago. My childhood best friend, 44M, invited me, my wife, 41F, and our son on a week-long trip to California with his family and 3 of his college/work friends, 42-45M, and their families. I'd met them before and we all got on well enough, so I agreed to it. They knew that my son was autistic before they invited us and were fine with it, apparently. The first year we went, my son had a really hard time adjusting but got better as time went on, although he did have a few meltdowns. But everyone acted like it was fine and that they understood and continued to invite us on the trip, and things usually went like that. Earlier this week, my friends said that they wanted to discuss the trip, and I, too, wanted to discuss the trip because of some concerns I had, mainly one of my friend's teenage daughters who was extremely rude to my son. So I agreed, and when I got there, things were really awkward. No one really said anything, and finally, one of the guys just said that they and their families had decided that it would probably be best if we, my family, didn't go on the trip this year. I was completely blindsided and, of course, asked why, and none of them would come right out and say it directly, but they vaguely said it was because of my son. They said that this year, since it was vacation, they wanted to be able to truly relax, and for the past few years, they haven't been able to. They also said that this year they really wanted some adult time, since they haven't had any the last few years. Whenever my wife and I went out, our son would have to come too because no one would stay with him, and quite frankly, I didn't trust any of the other kids to stay with him, and he had a meltdown once at a restaurant. Their final reason was that some of their kids were uncomfortable. We rent a big house out there and felt unsafe staying in the house because of one instance where my son did get a little out of hand one time out of the 4 years. So I did understand that part a bit. Like I said, they never came right out and said it was because of my son, but I knew, and it really hurt. This trip is the only time my wife and I ever get away, and they knew that. I think it's pretty sad that a group of adults can't see past a few inconveniences and annoyances from a child who can't help it for a few days. But I know it's a little different to me because I deal with it all of the time. Overall, I'm just angry, hurt, and confused, as is my wife, by all of this because they are supposed to be my friends, and I thought they understood everything. I feel like I'm ready to cut ties with all of them and not look back. But my wife thinks that I should tell them all how I truly felt about the situation so that they won't just think it's okay to do that to anyone. I don't really know what I'm asking. Whether I'm overreacting, I truly don't think I am, or whether I should just end the friendship now or talk to them first. TLDR, friends excluded me and my family from our annual trip because my son has autism. I just want to cut them off and be done with it, but my wife thinks I should talk to them and tell them just how unacceptable that is. Top comment. You have every right to feel hurt because we can't control the hands we're dealt. However, I'm inclined to say that your friends do have a valid point. An autistic child is a lot to deal with, and not everyone is able to do it. Your point of view is, people should accept him because he can't help it because he's your child and you're used to it. Imagine it from the other point of view. They see it as a child who can randomly go off at any moment whether he can help it or not. It doesn't matter if it's caused by a disease or just a hyperactive child. They see the potential meltdowns as uncomfortable and awkward. Pretend it wasn't your child. Pretend one of your friend's children has ADHD. His family wants to go on vacation because they're used to it and have learned to tune down his yelling. Would you want to go out with him constantly yelling and making people uncomfortable? Could your friends have been more straightforward in their approach? Yes. At the end of the day, they did a cost-benefit analysis and figured it was better to have peace of mind for their kids and them and decided to cut you. I recommend planning a vacation with your son. There's no reason why you all can't have a great time as a family somewhere. Update. After thinking hard about it, I decided that I would talk to my friends about everything that happened. We decided to meet again and talk it out. They said that they understood why I was hurt but weren't even planning on budging anyway. There was no hesitation this time, and one of them, the one with the rude daughter, told me straight out that being around my son was way too stressful and risky, and that this year they refused to constantly walk on eggshells and put their kids at risk for my family's sake. We were never the closest, but I still thought we were friendly enough acquaintances to be respectful to one another. But I guess not. And in the moment, we did get into a bit of a heated argument, and basically nothing got resolved. But my childhood friend did tell me that he doesn't want this to end our friendship and that maybe next year we could all work something out. But quite frankly, I don't really want to go on a trip with any of them, and I left. My wife, when I got home, was happy that I talked to them, but upset that I even considered trying to come up with a solution to go on a trip where we would not even be wanted, which I understand. As far as my friendship with those guys, I'm not sure where it stands, and if we don't talk in the future, it won't bother me too bad since they feel the way they do. I know that a lot of people disagree with me, but if you can't accept my child, then you can't accept me, especially when he's so dependent on me. I am a little disappointed because I thought we were all friends, but maybe it's for the best. TLDR. I talked to my friends and things didn't go well, but that may be for the best. Top comments. Comment 1. Everyone in your last post said this is how they probably felt and have a right to feel almost to the letter. They feel like they have to walk on eggshells. Do you think they should be made to feel like that on their vacation? You feel like they're rejecting your family, and you have a right to feel that way, but it seems like you still haven't looked at the other side of the coin. Comment 2. Your friends don't owe you a vacation. You're demonizing them as if they don't like you or your kid, and you feel that they should accept your son without reservations because his misbehavior is part of his disability. Vacations are not supposed to be stressful, and your son adds stress to their vacation. They are in no way obligated to deal with that. You are because he is your kid, and guess what? They tried for 4 years to accept the situation and see it from your end. What have you tried? We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.